Okay, you're streaming live, Allison, and we will begin. This is the Camden Select Board meeting for July 6th.
Bob, just a second.
Yeah.
We need to I'm bringing Matt Siegel, and it takes, I can only do one thing at a time. So he's.
Yep. Okay.
Um,
Thank you very much.
You've always been able to multitask. What happened?
I'm actually really quite poor at multitasking.
Thank you, Allison.
All right, Matt, good.
There's Bill.
Let us begin, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Camden Select Board meeting for July 6th, 2021. We are we're also webinar format this evening, and as before, you can find the link to come in as an attendee on our agenda on the town website. There are also instructions there on how to proceed if you wanted to do it by phone. So please join if you can. With that, we'll enter into our agenda. And first item is public input on non-agenda items, and I don't see anybody, so we'll proceed to approval of the board minutes for for June 15th, 2021.
Hold on, there is a hand up.
Okay.
So Tom Hedstrom has his hand up. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that's for comment on non-agenda items. So I'll promote him to a panelist if you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Allison, thanks for recognizing me. I have been requesting for a week or two to be included on the agenda of the select board meeting, and I've been denied that request. And I'm here simply to request that I be included on the agenda for the July 21st meeting.
Okay, we'll consider that, Tom, and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Take it easy. There's a long story here, and we'll discuss it later. And we'll just.
Bob, this isn't your select board.
We'll discuss it. Yeah, we will. I'll make sure we put on the list for the next select board meeting, and we will discuss it internally, as I told you before.
You never told me.
Yeah, I'm telling you that now. We will discuss it. Doesn't mean you're going to be on it, and you know the reasons why. So anyway, thank you very much, Tom. It's good to see you. Anybody else, Allison?
Not that I can. It looks like Tom has raised his hand again. But
We're going to move on. There was one request, but I don't see that person did not show up as far as I can see. So with that, we'll move on to the second item.
do we want to go through? There is somebody that's on via the phone. So I don't know if we did the overview where you tell people how to raise their hand by phone.
Yeah.
Stars. I believe it's.
Well, see, Allison, I believe all you have to do is press. Is it *9?
I think so.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
Yes, to raise your hand, it's *9. So
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody that is.
Thank you.
But I don't see that happening. So.
All right. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item number 2, which is the approval of the board minutes from June 15th, 2021.
I read them. They seem clear to me. I will make a motion, and then we can get into discussion afterwards that we approve the minutes of board minutes from June 15th, 2021.
Okay, there was, go ahead, Ines, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, in discussion, Matt did make one typo you found, Matt, under, I think it was Sharon Pullman's name.
Yeah, Sherman Pullman is spelled P-O-H-L-M-A-N as opposed to P-U-L. And then I had one just comment about John Burke, just making sure that he was designated as parking, transit, and downtown development consultant.
Okay.
That was it.
Any other modifications? Mark?
I will amend the motion to include those 2 corrections.
Okay, and Sophie, I assume you're okay with that?
I'm seconding, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
With that, I'll go for roll call vote with Matt.
In favor? Yeah, aye.
Yes. Allison,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Sophie,
Aye.
and Bob. Aye, 5-0. Thank you very much. Let's see now, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have two major items on the consent agenda. One is a request to approve the following Vittler lodging license renewals: A Little Dream, Camden Deli, Camden River House Hotel, Cedar Crest, Hawthorne Inn, and Subway. And please note I specifically left off Camden Bagel Cafe because there's no application in the package. And the second item of consent agenda is the appointment of a successor trustee for the Shady Niles Charitable Trust in the person of Ms. Catherine Gibson. Are there any objections to the consent agenda? And hearing no objections, items are hereby adopted. Any comment, Allison?
I think just,
Go ahead.
I have no objections, but just for the sake of public knowledge, I'm not sure everybody knows what the Shady Niles Trust is. And maybe Audra could just give a.
Yep, absolutely. So it's a trust fund that provides assistance to residents who are typically over the age of 55. And that assistance is usually for utilities. It can be for assistance with property taxes and, other types of general assistance that the town provides. And it sits sort of outside of our other trust funds where they're all, invested and managed by the town. The Shady Niles Trust Fund is different. So the town is one of the entities that's granted money by this trust, but the way that it's distributed is slightly different than with all of our other trust funds, where we have a trust fund committee that receives applications and hears applications. With the Shady Niles Fund, it's specifically set out that there are 3 trustees who make decisions as to how those funds are spent on behalf of the town's allocation. And that is myself as the town manager, Bob as the chairman of the board of the select board, and now it'll be Catherine Gibson, who's recently been by the select board appointed as the 3rd trustee.
And now, was she the same person that was on it before?
No, the person who was on it before was a woman named Diane Bacon. And Diane is she was a former employee of the town of Camden. And she worked with Shady Niles, who was also an employee of the town of Camden. And when Ms. Niles passed on, she left money in trust for, I think it was 3 different organizations. I believe it was the town, Camden Senior Citizens, and I'm not sure if the Camden District Nurses was the 3rd one. I don't exactly remember who, but the town was one, and town manager, chair of the select board, and this trustee who also works with the financial services institution who sort of manages the trust, is the 3rd person. So it works differently than all of our other trust funds.
Audra, if it works differently than the other trust funds and the usual trust funds, we all go, I guess, primarily through Janice to begin the process. How would somebody that needs assistance go to this trust fund?
It's the same in that, and this is something that we recently changed. It's the same where they would come through Janice and they'd fill out an application. It's more of on the back end that it's different. So, say we receive an application and we see that the person fits the criteria of the trust. That's when, if it's somebody who, they're the right age and the type of assistance that they're seeking is consistent with how the trust is laid out, we could, get myself, Bob, and now it would be Catherine to vote to spend those monies on that particular project or individual instead of sending it to the trust fund committee. So that's really the difference is the back end, not the front
Okay.
end.
I just want to make sure if the people that are watching that need the services, they know how to go after them. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. With that, we'll move
Oh,
on.
it looks like, Bob, we have got a couple hands raised via the Zoom feature of Sophie and Matt. I'm assuming have.
Just thanks,
sorry.
Jonathan. Just a quick question.
Sophie and Matt, I'm so not used to your politeness that, not that Allison and Mark.
We can change that very quickly, Bob. if you want.
No, Sophie. No. We're going to be the polite ones. Mais oui, certainement.
Sophie, go ahead.
Where are the financials for the trust?
So they're managed by, oh geez, I forget.
The name is in
I
the
think
letter.
it's in her
It's in the letter.
letter. So they're managed by, I'm gonna have to go down to the letter to figure out who does that.
Because this one's different than RM Davis.
Yeah.
Yep, so it's HM Payson. So all of our other trusts are RM Davis. So this one is with HM Payson and they give us a yearly distribution.
Okay.
And then that's there have been a few years when that yearly distribution wasn't used. And so that money sort of sat in a reserve account. But I think we're all up to date with having been able to sort of distribute the money that we've received from the trust.
Thank you.
Matt,
Yep. 1 second. I'm following up from Sophie. I also was asking, I had some questions about the actual assets. The last thing I found, Sophie, was the Form 990 from 2019. And Audra, there's a substantial amount of money in this account. Is that correct?
Do you mean the whole entire trust?
Yeah, and I guess my question is twofold. One, I went to the Free Press to see how one applies this piggybacks onto Mark's. It was not really clear about how one would apply for this. So I don't know if that's something that we can help bring to the community. And then to Sophie's point, I had not found any financials since 2019. So I was really quite curious as I was trying to figure out what this all was about.
Awesome.
So, part of the reason I was asking a few questions about this is Jenna and I have been the select board representatives to the trust fund committee, which is for all of the trusts. And we use trust funds in Camden to finance our general assistance program, whereas most towns in Maine administer the general assistance program with funding from the state. They have to follow all of the income guidelines and a series of rules from the state. We adopt those same guidelines, but then because we fund our own program, that's like the kind of thing when people come in for emergency housing or emergency fuel assistance, things like that. We fund that ourselves through the trust funds that are pretty substantial. It's been like historically, those funds have been underspent, which puts us in a great position now to be able to help people. But it's kind of turns into a little bit, the reserves on all of these at this point are the balances are really quite large, and it almost puts the town in the position of being like a mini nonprofit organization that then takes a significant amount of time to administer. And so this is probably part of a larger conversation that needs to happen about like how to efficiently manage the trust funds. And some of them came with, some of them are pretty broad in the way that we can apply them. And then some of them are really narrow. And it's been a problem in the past, like things that can only be used for infant milk for mothers and children, things like that, and finding ways to be able to use those funds to support the programs that we actually have in the community has been a challenge. But to really, as anybody that works with or for a nonprofit organization knows, there's a lot that goes into this, and so to really be able to make the best use of those funds, there's kind of like a long-term discussion that needs to happen with this one, with Shady Niles. It's like another layer really that kind of causes town staff to have to, instead of working with the trust fund committee, which is 2 select board members, the finance director, the assistant town manager, and the town manager. It's then, this different group. And it's just a lot of time. Janice does the work of deciding, okay, this is the type of thing that's just a normal general assistance type of thing where we're going to put somebody up in a hotel, but this is the type of request that needs to go to a larger committee to approve, like say somebody that has a leaking roof and doesn't have enough money to fix it or something. So she decides which ones of the trusts might work, and then she has to figure out, okay, well, we need to make sure we're spending enough of the Shady Niles money because it's a larger conversation that we could do better with, but there's a lot. Basically, I'm sort of saying we might need a workshop in the future to kind of talk about how we might be able to more effectively administer this. Maybe even like looking at a different model, I would think, for Shady Niles that maybe not, maybe they want to take it over or I don't know.
Well, we're limited by what the trust documents say. I mean, we tried to get this one lumped under the umbrella of like the trust fund committee and treat it exactly the same as how we treat all the other trust funds, but we couldn't because of the way that the trust documents are laid out. But I guess another thing, Matt, and sorry, I kind of take it for granted, who knows what, as part of the budgetary process, we have charitable organizations that apply for use of for trust fund assistance. So I think every year not every year, but we've been giving out about $150,000 worth of trust fund money to, various charitable organizations or service organizations that operate within the town of Camden or provide services to Camden residents. So that's on top of the trust funds really being the town's general assistance funding. And the good thing about that is, towns that have to rely on the state for general assistance. So most towns get reimbursed by the state for about 75% of their general assistance programs. Like if they have a resident who needs help with, food, rent, utilities, the state gives them back 75%, but they have to follow pretty strict guidelines. We're in a good position where we're able to be a bit more flexible with who we help and what we do for them, because of the fact that we don't take any reimbursement from the state and we use the trust funds.
And Audra, to that point, the standardized amount is about $150,000 a year that we try and distribute from the trusts.
That's just to like the service provider organizations and the charitable organizations. I think for help to individuals, it varies from year to year.
If you need more information on the trust, please go to chat with Audra. There's quite a few trusts and they have quite a few. Sure. But thank you very much for that information on Shady Niles.
Thank you
We're
both.
going to move on to our item 4, which is a public hearing for the liquor license applications. Normally, I would go through a routine for directions to the public to provide public input for the benefit of the select board before we would go into deliberation. But since we don't have any, I will proceed to look at these. There will be 3, by the way, because one, the Blaze is the application is not complete. It's missing public safety inspection, and we're going to move that one to a date uncertain. So we have 3 applications. We can take them individually as select board, or we can take them collectively. I leave it to a motion to decide. Allison, go ahead.
So I would just point out that I don't know that we would want to assume that there's no public input, since we do have a number of people in the attendees.
Yeah, I don't see anybody.
I mean, I see people there. Nobody's raising their hand,
right.
But
that's the basis I was using.
Okay, so
that's the reason I said that. Otherwise, I would go through the instructions for the public as to comments and all the directions related to a public hearing. But so we have, as we have in the past months, gone through this process on the webinar format, and we have 3 applications. Again, item B should not be considered on the motion due to incomplete information. So I leave it, if you wanted to do a motion for A3, we can do it, or we can take them individually if there are comments that the select board would like to make. It's either or, whichever way you want to go. Mark?
Let's take them individually.
Okay,
And,
okay.
and
Let's do first.
I'll make it. Do you want to do a
Recorded
public hearing for the first one? And
Yes, well, yeah, well, there is a
Okay, we do have
phone
a-
number to read. Okay, let's bring that person in first, and then I'll have to read the instructions. And let's identify who it is.
all right.
they're muted at the
Oh,
moment.
yep, so whatever phone number this is, you are able
Muted.
to talk. I will ask to unmute. Let's see how that goes.
Very good.
The directions for unmuting are star 6. So great, yeah. So for the person who's on the phone, there we go.
Hi, this is Matt Morgan. I'm with Blaze, and we did get the fire inspection done, but I guess it wasn't mailed in. Is that what I was trying to listen? You're saying that's why it's incomplete?
All I can tell you is in our, for the select board, for each of these, there needs to be certain information. And from my review of the packet, I believe what is missing is the inspections by police and fire department. It just doesn't happen to be in our packet. I'm sure there's no problem. But,
Right.
it's
We did have it done, but I can get a copy to you, and I apologize that you don't have it done, but we did do it before this call.
I'm sure you did, and this is the formality on our part. Please don't take it as a rejection of.
Oh, okay.
We'll just have to move it to our July 20th meeting, which is in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I would
Okay,
just
thank you.
add, Bob, that making sure that, hey, Matt, if you're still there, to make sure you get the
Yep.
code enforcement signatures as well, Matt,
Okay.
please.
Great.
And thank
Will
you.
do.
Thank you,
Yep.
Kelly.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Mark, you were going to make a motion for the first one?
Yes, let me go back to that. Sorry, I moved forward a little bit to look at the Blaze application. Second, and here we go. There's a lot of stuff on this agenda. Okay, I make a motion that we approve. No, public hearing. No, sorry, looking at last week's notes. I'll be there in a moment.
Sure. While you're doing that, Matt, Matt, just for the record, could you read out Matt's last name for us? They just came on so we can identify him.
Okay, application, I make a motion, we approve the application of the quarter deck DBA Cuzzies at 21 Bayview Street for a class 11 restaurant lounge liquor license.
Second.
Second, Allison, thank you. Discussion. You're raising your finger there, Matt.
I guess that's the hand. We haven't figured out the whole system here. Just a quick, in terms of discussion, in section 4D, for Cuzzies, there is on page 49 an incident report, but there's no explanation. So I just was wondering if there's any way to get clarification on what that is about.
Audra, do we have that?
That is something that typically is asked for at every renewal of Cuzzies liquor license. And so I think Randy just wanted to preemptively provide it. But they were closed down for pretty much all of last year. So not surprising that there's really no information on there.
Are we referring to the check mark regarding there's usually a check mark. It gets confusing sometimes about any incidents. Which one are you looking at, Matt Siegel?
Also, you know what? I'm going to take that all back because it is the column.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the way that it's formatted.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
I will
That's-
withdraw that comment completely, folks, and we'll move right along.
I believe there is a hand raised.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's after we close the public discussion. So we have to make a decision to reopen the public discussion and go back to square one. We can do that. If you want, that's fine.
I think we should. I think we should always allow
All
the
right.
public. to be-
Back to public discussion, and I'll bring them in, Allison, whoever's raising their hand, and I'll have to read them both there's instructions for public hearing.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion with this format, so.
Yeah, I get it. There's two, Allison, or one?
I only see one. We have Peter Lindquist in the queue here.
1 second, Peter, please. 1 second, Peter. Just try and make sure there's nobody else.
I don't see any hands
Okay,
raised.
Peter, just FYI, we're reopening, I'm going to reopen the public. You were a tad late with your hand, but no problem. Peter, you know the process. You know, we want to listen to public input on any of these applications. Please be brief, direct your comments through me. Your information is to be used by the select board. When we close public hearings from the public, and when I close that off, we will deliberate, the select board will deliberate. We will take no further comment from the public unless a select board member has a question of the public. And since you are the public today, Peter, please go ahead.
It appears that Cuzzy's application is missing the state of Maine Department of Health certificate. It's supposed to be there. It's not there.
Audra, is it true? I don't see it.
I see it.
Where is it?
I see it on page, I don't know what the page 34 of
I'm looking.
State of Maine Department of Health and Human Services, Cudzy's 21 Bayview. Expires 6/22/2022.
Yep, that would be it. I'm just trying to find it.
Okay, it wasn't, okay, that's fine.
It's there. Yep. Is that your only comment, Peter?
Oh, yeah, because it's not under the liquor license
Okay.
section. It was under the other one.
Exactly.
The special amusement.
Sorry, Peter, it was a little confusing. That's our bad. All right, with that, I will, there are no other public comments. I'll again close the public input and revert to select board decision on this matter. Mark,
I'll restate the motion that, make a motion that we approve the application of the quarterdeck DBA Cuzzy's at 21 Bayview Street for a Class 11 restaurant lounge liquor license.
Second,
I'd like to move to amend. Can we approve both licenses that Cudzy's is asking for at the same time?
well, what other license are you referring to?
They're asking for a special amusement one as well.
Yep.
There's two applications for Cudzy's.
Hold on a second. Yeah, the answer is you can. I always want to make sure I'm just flashing through pages here. Hold on a second. Make sure I'm on the right.
Yeah.
1 second, Mark. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. There's an application because he's a special amusement permit. We absolutely can and do them unless there's other public input on that item. And if anybody raises their hand, I'll pause here just to take our time. If there's any more comments, raise your hand, public. Otherwise, we're going to continue to, if possible, amend the motion to cover A and D under one motion.
I will amend the motion to approve the application of the quarterdeck DBA Cuzzy's at 21 Bayview Street for a Class 11 restaurant lounge liquor license, and also the application of quarterdeck DBA Cuzzy's at 21 Bayview Street for a special amusement permit.
A second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Not hearing a roll call vote. Allison,
aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Sophie,
Aye.
Bob, I also 5-0. On to the only other one we would have then would be the application of Weiss Hospitality doing business as Hawthorne Inn.
I'll make a motion that we approve the application of Weiss Hospitality DBA Hawthorne Inn at 9 High Street for a renewal Class 5 bed and breakfast liquor license.
Second,
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Not hearing any roll call vote. Sophie,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Nelson,
aye.
Bob, I also. 5-0. That ends at the conclusion of our public hearing items. And we'll be back to revert to our item 5 on our agenda, which is a request for the amendment of the Camden Police Ordinance Part for our Traffic Code, Section 15, Section 5 parking lots. Rather than read it all, Audra, do you want to take us through the components here?
Absolutely. So, as you know, the select board has the ability to amend the traffic code. And part of the traffic code is designating surface parking lots and, whether those surface parking lots are, a few hours, overnight, day-long parking, whatever the decision is of the board. So we discussed, I believe it was back in April or May, that we had asked the employees that are in the town office and opera house if they would be willing to park in the Knoxville parking lot and open up the opera house lot spaces as 2-hour parking for the general public, and they agreed to do so. So the item A, 5A, would address that. So it would be formally moving these spaces into a 2-hour designation away from all-day permitted parking spaces. And that would happen from May 1st to October 31st. After the 31st of October, they would go back to being sort of all-day parking. And then the second amendment, 5B, is formally adding the Knoxville parking lot to the parking schedule. And this is just an oversight and something that we should have done when the town commenced the lease purchase agreement of this lot. Because prior to the town formally leasing it, it wasn't a public parking lot, it was private parking. And so now that we're leasing it, it's a public parking lot and should be part of our parking lot schedule within the traffic code.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
In reading the Town of Camden public hearing notice, I can see the red information adding for Knoxville parking lot. In the second one, Opera House parking lot, the red previous information is lined out, and the new blue information, which I believe is the new one, reads 2-hour parking from May 1st to October 31st, except for a single parking space is reserved all day for town employee parking. November 1 to April 30 reserved for town employees from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. It doesn't read properly. I don't understand. Can other people see what I'm seeing? Because it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. You see it, Audra?
Sorry.
Sure. Sure. Are you talking about the second
house.
paragraph?
It says,
Yeah.
under the Town of Camden public hearing notice is hereby given the Camden Select Board will hold public hearings on Tuesday, July 6th. And it talks about amend the Camden Police Ordinance. But what it says about the Opera House parking lot makes no sense whatsoever.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Sorry, maybe because I'm too close to it, I don't.
Well, I
It
think,
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Allison,
So
what,
there,
take us through the logic, Allison.
so during the summer, so it's been broken up between this, summer and winter. So the 2-hour parking from May 1st to August, basically we're giving up town employee parking there all summer, except for one space, which we are keeping as designated town employee parking, and that's because of the need for the code enforcement officer to come back and forth
Okay.
quite often. And
Now,
so,
because I noticed in that parking lot, there is one sign that says reserved for town. The one sign was left up. Okay, I didn't understand, it's, the way I read it was 2-hour parking, except for a single space, comma, that's what I should have seen, is reserved all day for town employee parking. Okay, one single space is reserved. Okay.
Yeah,
I
I think it's written fine.
was reading a comma in there that was not there.
it's tough. And I mean, I've had to be pretty close to it also to understand what's going on. I am unsure if a member of the general public would be able to figure that one out.
Oh,
But
and one
But-
thing, sorry, I didn't explain as well. In the Washington Street parking lot, a lot of those spaces also were reserved for employee parking. And so this, this would also address that and returning those to be 2-hour spaces as well.
so what this oh, sorry,
Allison, go ahead.
it appeared to me that you were doing something a little bit more, I don't want to say radical, but then I thought that those spaces were going to be given back to the town employees, so to speak, for the winter. And it looks like all we're doing is returning them to all day parking, not returning them to permitted parking. I mean, I support the way it's written, I think, but I was just wanting to make sure
Right.
what the
Yeah,
intent.
and it'll be, at that point, it'll be more of a first come, first serve thing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, well then I will make a motion that we amend the Camden Police Ordinance Part 4 Traffic Code, Section 15, Section 5, parking lots. A, the Opera House and Washington Street lots remove reserved parking spaces, formerly town employee parking spaces, from May 1st to October 31st, with the exception of one space. Designate those spaces as 2-hour parking. B, add Knoxville parking lot to the schedule. Lot has 100 spaces available as all-day parking lot year-round. And also, which is not on their schedule, make the appropriate changes as in the amendment to the Washington Street parking lot as well.
Allison,
Second for discussion, but
sure. Let's
then I
listen.
have a
No,
comment.
made and seconded discussion, Allison.
The more I think about this, the more I think it's going to be making that all day on a first come first serve basis seems problematic to me, because it's going to be a fight between Long Grain employees and town employees and French and Brown employees. And I don't think it's the kind of thing where demand is going to go away in the winter. And I just think we're setting ourselves up for a problem. So it should either be, I don't know what kind of deal has been made or discussed with the town employees, but, or that we should keep it 2 hours. I don't know, because I know that the primary complaint there seems to be from, downtown employees parking there. And there isn't enough room for all the town employees to park there as they wish. And then,
Well,
I don't know, maybe this is all worked out and I'm overthinking it, but,
No,
I get your point, Allison. I think it's, I understand this, so I just make sure I understand this, right? For the summer months that's going to be a 2-hour parking space. So yeah, you're right, Allison. If employees in the area start parking, they're going to have to move their car every 2 hours.
If I can be honest, none of this is going to be resolved till we have a better parking management strategy. It just isn't. It's already a problem. I'm already getting complaints that, town employees gave up their parking spaces and now just employees from other businesses are parking in them. So, I mean, quite honestly, this is never going to be fixed. It's never going to be any better until we have a better way of managing parking in the town. So I think that, yeah, I mean, we could sort of like make changes and go over this and debate it, but I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done pretty comprehensively on parking. And maybe and I'm hoping that, if we get that underway, then we can sort of talk about something it's going to be a little more logical across all of town.
Well, we get two choices. We can approve
looks
it.
like we have some hands. I don't know if you can see
We
those.
approve it as written, or we can just, until you're saying we're not going to get this straightened out to get the parking, system defined and blah, blah, then why are we changing? And we got two choices, go forward with the Washington Street piece and put the the Washington parking lot, of course. You're all both
I
Washington.
guess my point is nothing that we do today is going to be
I agree.
settle the issue.
I agree.
We should still do it.
Well,
Well,
I think
no,
they've already changed the spaces to 2-hour spaces. We can go ahead and make these changes today, and then as we get, if we don't have a parking management system in place by the end of summer, we can come back and adjust if we feel we need to adjust.
Yeah, I don't think the building side spaces are marked 2 hours yet, Audra.
They are.
Oh, they are?
They
Right.
They are.
All right.
You might want to, Sophie, I would suggest that you use your actual hand and raise
Yeah,
it as
because
well, so that-
you're-
because otherwise he's not going to.
Nobody's paying attention, so, and, okay.
I saw the hand. I was just trying to get past your discussion.
No, but I think since we can still put in a change and it's not going to solve anything, but I think giving it back to the town employees in the fall would be a sign of a gesture of goodwill. And we can still do this in the way it's written until we come up with a better management solution. Because if I remember correctly, Audra, you were kind of getting their buy-in into changing the system. So I think a gesture of goodwill saying comes the fall, you get your parking space on a temporary basis until we have a better parking management system would be a nice gesture.
Any other comments or discussion? We have a motion and a second roll call vote. Mark.
Aye.
Allison.
I am in support of what Sophie said, that I do believe that changes a little bit the language that might be needed here, but I think we can probably deal with that
We
Yeah,
finished.
later. Yeah.
later. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So
If we can agree on it today and implement it, it's fine.
aye.
Continue. Thank you, Allison. Matt
Aye.
and Bob. Aye. Sophie, nice to hit you. Aye. All right. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the confirmation of the town manager's appointments of department heads pursuant to Article 3 of the town charter, as I find out also required by state statute, which makes me kind of cringe. But anyway, we have the list in here, and it's the list we've had before. Comments? Anyone? Allison?
Really, state statute requires that we,
The state statute that I went
that
through
doesn't.
with well, it says we have to confirm department heads. It doesn't say technically we have to confirm the assistant code enforcement officers and those titles. You could debate that a little bit, but yeah, I've gone around on this, and yeah, it's by the way, I'm not even, nobody can explain to me what confirmation means. Are we confirming they're not from outer space, or that we're confirming that Audra's smart, which we already know? So, but that's what it is. We can muse over it till we turn blue, but that's what it says.
It says this in our town, more than just in our town charter. It says it in our,
State statute. I double checked that with our, believe it or not, our charter commission, because I asked to consider making a change to our charter, and they wanted to, but they found that they couldn't.
So state statute
Alright.
requires that the code enforcement officer and the licensed plumbing inspector be.
Yeah, I get it.
but not everybody else.
I think you could debate as to some of the titles in there, because they're department head and certain ones are specified and others are a little, it's a gray zone, let me put it that way. But while we're approving, I'm sorry, we're not approving, while we're confirming these titles that Audra's team, we could split hairs, but I don't think it's worth the energy.
Sounds like you've already put in plenty of.
Okay, so you have a comment? You're muted, Sophie.
I have a quick question. Thanks, Bob. Jody Hanson is both the finance director and the deputy treasurer. And has that always been the case?
So it's kind of always been the case that Marlene Libby, who's now the deputy finance director, her official title was treasurer. And so she was she's the treasurer. And then we had a finance director, and the finance director has always been the deputy treasurer.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty, I mean, I'm sure there are some towns where the finance director is also the treasurer, but quite honestly, I I haven't seen many where that's the case.
Okay. It's just that for me, it would be like totally crazy to have somebody who's both the payer and the treasurer, basically. So the person who makes, anyway, but if that's how it's been done and there's no conflict, and I see that Bill is here and is happy with that organization, I'm fine.
It gets down to, I believe it gets down to operational versus organizational type,
Right.
Like secretary, treasurer, president kind of thing. With that, can we have a motion to accept these individuals, confirm these individuals?
I'll make a motion that we confirm the town manager's appointments of the department heads pursuant to Article 3 of the town charter and other job listings as they are listed.
This is the packet.
Can you perhaps amend your motion to include Andrew Lowe as a alternate licensed plumbing inspector, please?
Sure. Confirmation of the town manager's appointments of the department heads pursuant to Article 3 of the town charter, including Andrew Lowe as assistant plumbing inspector.
Alternate.
Pardon me?
Alternate.
Alternate plumbing inspector, and confirming the rest of the list of employees as listed below.
Second.
Motion made in second. Discussion. All those in favor, Allison?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Sophie?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Bob, aye, 5-0. Thank you very much. On to 4 action items we have to address, the first of which is the approval of the new fire truck purchase. This is obviously, Audra, the follow on from our budgeted, approved budget, town voted budget of $350,000, I believe, for the purchase of this vehicle. And what we're confirming here is exactly what?
So, and I'd recommend you bring in Chris Farley for this, but this is just approving the purchase of that truck. So Chris joined a purchasing consortium, and that's just towns from all across the nation that write out RFPs for pieces of equipment like this and have spec'd them out already and already sort of put them out to bid. And it just allows us to sort of jump into that process without having to go, write up the RFP and send the bid out from scratch. So, we used a purchasing consortium to find this piece of equipment. It's everything that was sort of discussed as part of the budget deliberations. And, Chris can answer questions about, the piece of apparatus itself and what it's doing and, why it was recommended, because I know that not everybody here was part of the budget discussion around it.
Yes. I remember it very well, actually.
I'm sure so. He could probably tell us all about it. But that's,
This will set the trigger. This sets the trigger for the commencement of everything. Is that correct? This purchase approval sets the date from that date forward as to when we get this truck. Chris, you want to say something?
Well, I think what we're asking to do is approve the purchase and either having Audra or I sign the contract.
Does the signature of that contract, does that kick off the actual order and the delivery of the truck? Yes.
We need to sign the contract with the dealer so that triggers the 240-day delivery time after we sign the contract. Right.
Yeah. And I guess just to remind everyone, we're using $150,000 from the proceeds of selling one of our fire trucks to Hope.
120.
Sorry, 120 to fund the purchase of this truck, and then the additional 200,000 is a lease purchase agreement, and I believe Androscoggin Bank had the lowest rates.
Allison.
Is there something else that is going to be sold also? We're retiring another truck?
Right, engine 6, which is basically 42 years old is what would be retiring as well. Yes.
And so is that going to be something that can be sold, or are there?
I would think that that the town would just sell it as it does any other piece of surplus equipment. So, I mean, yes. So I don't anticipate it would generate a whole lot of revenue.
You broke
Okay.
up. You're saying
I
that
mean, we
truck
have sorry.
Go ahead, Allison.
I guess I bring it up mostly because it seems like we sometimes have equipment that just sort of lingers around, and it's been a topic of discussion a few times at the select board level, putting things out, a list of equipment, and just making sure that actually happens. And so no matter what it's worth, that the highest and best use of it going forward actually, just making sure that we actually do that would be good.
I'm all for doing that. We would like the space in the apparatus bin.
Okay.
I bet.
Other questions, Matt?
And Chris, with the removal of number 6, should it be sold, will you also be looking for an additional mini pumper? Will that be something down the road that you're looking for a second one of these vehicles?
I don't anticipate that.
Thanks,
Okay.
Chris.
Mark?
Just to, mention to the public, one of the reasons we're doing this, Chris had an example of this kind of truck late last year. I think it was the one that Owl's Head purchased. Is that correct? I believe it was Owl's Head. And it's a smaller truck on basically an extended pickup frame instead of a large fire truck. And it allows the fire department to get into locations and back roads with a pumper truck where a fire engine cannot go. So it gives us more availability to respond to fires in places where we had difficulty before. It's a tremendous, I saw the example they brought by. It's a tremendous idea and will be really helpful to a lot of the more obscure roads in town where they might have trouble and worried about fire response. So it's a great idea.
Do we have a motion to accept?
I will make a motion that we approve the purchase of the new pumper fire truck.
I think we should amend that motion according to what Allison was saying, that this motion should also include the putting up for sale the other retired piece of equipment as soon as possible.
I'll amend it to say we approve the purchase of the new fire pumper truck using funds from the previous sale of engine 2 and the future sale of engine 6, which is also being retired.
I second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion, board members? Not hearing anything, I'll go for a roll call vote to Matt,
Aye.
to Allison,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Vicky.
For the second time on this item, I, with great pleasure, because I support the plan Chris is putting together. Aye.
And Bob, can I just show you the sample from Pierce just for fun? Chris, I don't know if you saw this. One second.
Can I finish the roll call vote, Matt?
Absolutely.
Okay, Bob, yes, also. Absolutely. Go ahead, Matt.
Just one sec, just for you, Chris Farley. Oh, you got, there you go. With Camden already on it, apparently, Chris, but from the wrong company, and in Camden, Arkansas.
And it probably $200,000 more.
That's exactly what Pierce, apparently Pierce, again, I won't take up more time, Bob, but thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you, Chris, and happy riding in about 8 months, whatever the heck.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you all.
Take it. Right. Next on the approval items, we have the approval of the Snowball budget. Do we want to bring somebody on with this order also?
Yes, please. Let's bring Beth Ward in.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay. Lots of numbers in there. Is Beth there? There she is. Oh, nice chair, Beth. You're muted, Beth.
Hi there.
Hello, Beth, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Oh, good. We have in our packet, they're most slightly revised. Remember, we deferred this from the last meeting because they were making some minor changes. I believe it was related to the numbers around the forthcoming tube hill. I believe that's what some of the changes you made, and did a good job, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm open to comments and questions from the select board.
I do.
Mark?
As I always do, I notice we're up on budget this year. Last year we had extremely wonderful budget year for the Snowball. Obviously, people discovered that is a wonderful way to spend their time outdoors safely. Very excited. We're delighted that the tubing hill is coming back and that we're using some of the proceeds from last year. My concern is there is definitely a budget creep. It's the highest budget we've had so far. And my question, I think, that I have every year is, are we prepared for, last year was a very difficult snow year. And with what we're seeing heat-wise around the country, even here, we're warmer earlier than we normally are. Are we prepared to adjust the budget based on precipitation and temperature that we have?
Mark, you always ask that, but when we make suggestions to adjust the budget, you're the first one to complain about it. So, I mean, absolutely, we're happy to do whatever we need to do to stay within budget, but you actually have to want to stay within budget, which means make sacrifices. So, I mean,
well, I noticed, hold on a second. I noticed that hold on, I'm having trouble finding the budget in my, there's so much paperwork.
It's under Snowball
I
budget
noticed
now.
that there is a budget, the budget is up this year. Consider it's the highest budget we've ever had. And I always wonder, why are we getting a higher budget when we know that there's potential for some serious problems?
Yeah, but you ask for more stuff. You want the tubing hill, you want more hours, you want more snowmaking, you want more of this, you want more of that. That means the budget is going to go up.
I think he might be, is he possibly setting you up to be able to answer the question in a different way? We have significant revenues.
I feel like we're constantly trying to talk out of both sides of our mouth about the Snowball. If you want more services, if you want more hours of operation, if you want more activities there, the budget is constantly going to increase. If you want us to control costs, the budget, we're going to offer less services, we're going to have less snowmaking, we're going to have less hours of operation, and the budget will go down. Those are the choices we have.
Okay, well, let's go through some of the questions. The first item, administration, average year is 183,000, actual 173, budget 192, actual 193. This year we go to 205, which is, I'm just looking to understand why it's going up so that it's clear.
Oh.
All right, then ask the question. Beth, can you answer the question as to why the administration total under 25, I'm sorry, under 7, I can't read, under 7001 is gone up from 186, looks like about $30,000 increase.
So some of that is wages. But
isn't some of that tubing hill?
Not under administration. It's all under Alpine. Alpine's the big ticket number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Alpine goes up to 900 from 830, 871. So there's about a $70,000 gain there. And I understand, Audra. I was the person here when we went through the serious
problem. I understand, Mark, but we did that last year. You said, cut the budget. I cut the budget by reducing hours, and you were the first person in my office saying, why did you reduce the hours? So I just need you to understand this. If you want more services, if you want more hours, if you want more snowmaking, the budget is going to go up. There is no other way of doing this.
Allison, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I guess I would in some ways echo what Audra is saying, because there's been a history with the Snowball. I think of us, the community in general, oftentimes being frustrated if it gets closed earlier or, you know, isn't open as much. And there's been sort of a feeling that sometimes they were being ultra conservative in the expense budget, and that in the long run, sometimes making these decisions that are going to save a few $1,000s here and there. I think there was a strong message that was sent to them and like to us and sent to them that was like, it was detrimental in the long run to be kind of penny pinching in terms of trying to say, you know, we're going to try to close early, we're going to try to do all these things. And we would say, no, but this ultimately is bad. And if it costs us a few more, you know, a few $1,000s to be open during, you know, a little bit longer, we want you to do that. And so the expense budget going up does not mean that that there isn't also a corresponding increase in revenue. And that's what we've asked them to do, is to try to invest in being available and being open more. And I think that we have seen that has worked. We know there is no, we've said there is no magic formula with a Snowball. There is no recipe to make sure that we can always make money or not lose money, but that in general, people want that service to be available, and that taxpayers are willing to pay something to make it more accessible and less expensive. That's why we did the free Wednesdays thing. Everybody panicked a little bit about that, but we, you know, they said we might lose money and we don't, and we said, that's okay. It's accessibility and availability is the more important value here. And if it's a financial disaster, we will deal with that, but that hasn't happened. So I would be really reluctant to send the message to Beth and Holly and, you know, Audra, that we want to see tight expense budgets, because we know that that doesn't necessarily correlate to what taxpayers end up paying anyway. So yeah.
Okay, I go ahead.
Mark, please. Select board members' comments, Sophie.
So two things. The first one is that the Snowball had a really good year this year with excess revenues, and it's a bit surprising to see an increase of 14% overall of the budget. So Beth, I would like a little bit more clarification on this. The second point before I yield the floor to you is, for me, the Snowball is typically an asset that we cannot fund year over year on a tactical basis. And I think we really need to develop a strategic plan to address the issues around climate change, but that cannot be done on a yearly basis, on an annual basis. It's impossible. There's a misalignment of timeframes here that is going to end up, we're all going to end up in a wall. So I would like to suggest, Bob, and let me know if I'm wrong here, that this is one of the things we should add to our town priorities, but really try to have a comprehensive plan for maybe like a 5 or 10 year plan for the Snowball, instead of just looking at the annual budget, which is extremely tactical and periodical, and say, are you prepared for climate change? Because it's not going to work.
No, I think, Sophie, to your point, my comment was going to be exactly that, because we have, remember, the town in January 26th voted for the support of the Maine Climate Coalition, if I got the right name. And that has aspects with related to sea rise. It has aspects in it for temperature rise. Exactly to your point. We discussed it briefly last year when we were proposing some different expenditures here. We need to look forward and see what our expected life expectancy is, because, well, the voters voted for that climate report from Augusta. So yes, but that's a long-term report. I'm hoping it comes out to 100 years, Beth. Unfortunately, I don't believe that. But to be consistent as a town, if we can't be preaching on the one hand big storms and sea level rise, and on the other hand not preaching that the Snowball could, to Mark's point, walk into some problems. And to all these points, though, every year on a consistent basis, on a weekly basis, we've watched the financial of the Snowball, Matt and Sophie, to monitor. So we don't, in past years, it hasn't happened recently, but in past years, we hit some speed bumps and we were trying to vacillate on decisions whether we close on the first week in March because it didn't feel good, or stay open, but we've got to be consistent. And we have been for the last few years. We pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, we stayed open through the end of March and we made it through even though last year, you're right, the natural snowfall was abysmal. It was a great year, very complicated year, and congratulations on managing a very, very difficult year. But other comments, Select Board. But one of the things you could do though, Beth, I think there are two major changes in your summary budget, and just explain a couple of them to Mark's point. And one is just a summary of why the Alpine expense went up as it did. And number two, you did a very, in my opinion, very reasonable projection of Alpine revenue, which was less than we actually received last year. Those two are key. Could you please address those for the board?
And also the
Sure,
question
and-
I asked about.
Yeah, and Sophie's question. Yes, sure.
Thanks, Beth.
Yes. So to go back to Sophie earlier, since the budget committee saw this budget, we added the Tubing Hill expenses and revenues in, as well as 2 full-time employees. So those 2 full-time employees fall under Alpine, and you will see those wages are increased. So that probably answers most of Mark's question.
Okay. Did you get the revenue side?
The revenue side.
Well, last year we made just over $1 million. Great year, by the way. And your proposed budget is $900,500, which is, still a big jump from prior years, but you brought it down from last year. What's the overall philosophy there?
Well, we have no idea. I mean, we were blessed with the most ever season pass holders that we've ever seen this year. And we were able to bring in as many day tickets, even with our less hours, operation hours. We typically, when we are kind of studying the seasons, when we come off a great year, the following early bird season pass sales are up. And I think we can see the trend. Maybe we got some new or old skiers to come back to the sport because of COVID, and they bought the equipment or they learned how to lease it from Side Country Sports or Main Sport, and
Right.
and maybe they're going to be hooked. And I honestly think we're going to see the recreation trend stay around. People got used to it over this year and a half. And that's my feeling. That's why.
Other comments, Mark?
Well, first off, I believe Sophie is correct. I think Allison is correct. And I believe Audra is correct in picking on me. And I apologize because I am the first person to come in and say, wait a minute, why are we closing when there's snow on the slopes and stuff like that? I always like to bring up the question and make sure that people understand we're not just rubber stamping the budget. It's gone through because I was a part of the board and town management when we had the year of the disaster. And there's still I'm still a little bit, there was so much angst about that still informs me a little bit. So I apologize if I lean that way a little bit much, but I did start with saying it was an incredible last year. And the one thing that has really made the difference, I believe, in the last couple of years, the ability of and the changes and the way they've done snowmaking has so improved the conditions when we haven't had natural snow the last couple of years, particularly, it's made a big difference. So I'm grateful for the changes that Beth has made there and how well that's been done because it's made a big difference. So I apologize for being.
No reason to apologize, Mark.
Audra's right. I am the first person to go into her office and pick on her about it. But it's because I'm concerned both ways. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, and Bob's right. We look at since that last disaster, we look at the reports every single week. Jody prepares it, which was never used to happen before, and the previous boards were caught unaware. So it's just an important one, and I just want to make sure that everybody is dotting every I and looking at every T. So congratulations, Beth, on a great year last year and thinking it through. And Audra, I apologize if I will be back in your office again. I'm sure at some point this year picking on you about it.
No, don't apologize. I
It's
think
because I care.
it's a good thing to bring up. And I think all of you know this, but I think, sometimes just stating it publicly, there's no magic to it. There's no special thing that Beth or myself or any of the select board can do in certain years when there's just no snow and there's no people coming. All we can do is be diligent and pay attention and, try to make adjustments where we can, and balancing, sort of the desire to stay within budget with the desire to provide as good a service as we can to everyone. So yeah, there's no magic in any of it. It's all just sort of like a lot of clunky decision making and weighing one thing against the other and doing it as it comes. So, and I mean, I don't have to tell Mark that. Mark knows better than anyone after how many years of this? 7?
Yeah, it's been quite a few. Onward to Allison, please.
So just to be clear, because it's talking about the budget going up a lot, but what is being asked for from taxpayers here?
Nothing.
Right. So, and that's, I didn't even see the $20,000 of town support in this budget.
Allison, that goes in the general fund, not in the
No, but
budget.
it's not saying the revenue budget, the revenue, they're not proposing to use any of that here, whereas in previous budgets, it has. So we're talking about a difference between budgeting in previous years for saying, as a response to what we have said in the past, we wanted to give $20,000, which is like not a very expensive town park, to try to support this so that they didn't have to say like, oh, we're going to close the Snowball if one piece of equipment breaks, which is the kind of stuff that was almost happening before as a result of this like penny pinching expense budget. So now we're looking at a budget which is actually being brought to us is a reduction in the proposed use of taxpayer funds. So, I mean, that's like an essential point here.
Well, I think
The other thing that I just wanted to say briefly is that, again, what we've heard lots of is that people want the Snowball to be accessible. So the tubing hill is like a huge monumental win. That's a big reason for the budget going up this year. And it is definitely a response to community appeals. But the other thing that I have heard a bunch is like this, that the ADA stuff is a really big concern, and for the town of Camden not to be willing to invest in just some ramps, and getting somebody in a wheelchair should be able to get up to that deck. And a few people that I really never actually would have expected to have to say this to me have said it. And I mean, I think they're right that we should be able to do better. And I know that we have massive plans for redesigning the Snowball, and maybe at some point it won't be necessary, but investing in some kind of a modular ramp system that, maybe we could take down and use it somewhere else if we don't need it in the future. I would really support adding that also to the budget if we could find a way to do it.
Right. Who else had their hand up? Sophie, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I had my hand up again. Listening to what Beth is saying about, we don't know how people are going to behave and whether they're going to come back or whatever. It strikes me a little bit like there's some things we could do with marketing and emailing and keeping in touch with people. So I'm just curious, and Beth, I'm happy to have this conversation away from the select board, if you want to bounce ideas or whatever. But I do think that Mountain Resorts are becoming more and more aggressive in marketing to people who come in the winter, try to bring them back in the summer. I know, for instance, that Stowe makes more money in the summer than in the winter these days, which is probably the model we'll have to look into. But I was just, I'm hoping that we're not passively hoping that people are coming, but that there's proactive reaching out to the people who came last year to make sure that they come back. So that's it.
Yes,
But thank you.
absolutely. And I'd love to throw some ideas off you, Sophie. Thank you.
Well, but even so, Beth, I noticed in line 7001 3011 that printing had gone up to 4K. And I thought, Sophie, to your point, so Beth, is that not involved in a new marketing campaign? It went from $800 to $4,000. I was hoping upon hope that might involve a new marketing campaign.
So yes and no. We've kind of gone away from a lot of printing and are doing more newsletters and social media and that kind of stuff than we are like the physical brochure. We do have to redo our brochure this year because we're moving different parts of the mountain. We need a new map and all of that. But that printing line is actually a lot of season pass printing and the different things that we have, the ticket printing, the different things that we have to print to stay in business. And usually it's an every other year thing that we order our bulk tickets, like our day tickets.
So it sounds like a separate conversation in terms of marketing communications.
Sure.
Sounds great. Thanks, Beth.
Bringing Jody to the clarification point. Mark, you have another question.
One last comment, and I bring this up every year, and it's something as much as I can fuss about this budget. The one thing we always have to remember is what happens to this town when we bring so many people into this town in the wintertime. It supports our businesses, it supports our lodges, our hotels, our economy to a tremendous extent in the wintertime, way beyond what this, but the money that comes into town is way beyond what we spend on this budget. And that's something that people need to remember. It is a huge asset to the town. And that's my last comment.
Thanks, Mark. Also, just I brought Jody on in case she wants to correct what numbers I'm going to mention, but just so the public understands, there are two buckets of money in terms of trying to cover the negatives. I'm talking about the general fund, which is the taxpayer-supported chunk of our town, which has, I believe, to date about $50,000 total in reserve for the Snowball. Is that correct? Yeah, she's saying yes. Yes, and we also, because the Snowball is a special project fund, which is separate from the general fund. I'm talking a little bit of this for the benefit of Matt and Sophie also, but because of last year's success, thank you, Beth, we still remain, after spending some monies investing in certain equipment, we still have about $70,000 in the special projects fund in reserve from last year. About.
We are actually about 115,000 to the good at the time. So
okay.
I believe we have about 25,000 more to spend to complete the two projects that they're working on right now.
Right. So that's about 90,000. My number was too low, but I just wanted to point that out. We have quite a substantial back of the pocket, two buckets, one in the general fund that was put aside $25,000 over 2 years of $50,000 in the general fund, which taxpayers funded. And then there's the success of this special project last year, which leaves us in the order of $90,000 or something like that in that fund. Or, well, let's call it anything we want, including rainy day funds. So we're in a decent position. We haven't really been in a solid position for many years. We don't want to squander it, certainly, but I just wanted to make sure the public understands that point. But does anybody else on the board have a question about any line item on the budget? That's because we need to move on with, okay, do we have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept the budget for the Snowball as proposed by Beth.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Matt.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Ms. Sophie.
Yes, aye.
And Bob, I also. Beth, keep it rolling, will you?
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. Let me just get back to my where we should be. Hold on a second. And we have
7C.
Yeah, we have we're talking about item C, 7C, which is request for an authorization to spend up to $20,000 to implement the harbor access study findings for Sherman Cove. Audrey, would you lead us into this one so everybody understands what we're looking to try to do and what the money might be spent on?
Certainly. So periodically over the last, this has been going on for quite a long time. There's been some uncertainty around some of the town right-of-ways to the harbor, particularly the right-of-ways that lead to Sherman's Cove. One of the sort of biggest examples being Sherman's Cove Road, because there is a right of way that leads down to the water there, and it's been much disputed over the years. And there, as you can see in your packet, Bill Kelly was involved in a boundary line settlement with one of the property owners that abuts the town's right of way. So it's sort of very well established in one area. And in order to sort of, make that right of way more accessible and, have it be a better access point for the public to get down to Sherman's Cove. We still have some additional work to do. And we're hoping that, we won't need to, use the $20,000 that we're asking for approval up to for things like surveying work. Because, I think that the first approach, since we have a pretty good idea of, the right-of-way boundaries, is asking one of the abutting property owners to move some fencing that's currently obstructing it. So that's what I would recommend for the first approach is, directing the town attorney to send a letter asking them to, move the fencing out of the right-of-way. And, then if we need to move on to things like a boundary line survey or even, eminent domain, we can have those conversations, later in time. But I think for now that should be sort of our first approach to that particular right-of-way down to the harbor or Sherman's Cove more specifically.
Well, there's a recommendation for doing surveying in that area. That's what the money is for, resurveying.
Yeah, it would be to sort of clarify one of the boundary lines if need be.
Okay.
But I'm hoping that won't be necessary.
Allison.
Yeah, I mean, and there are other places too, as you could probably see some of these. There was some recommended survey work to be done on even, Harbor Road. We're having a lot of these places that are actually public access points haven't been properly marked. And so it's just kind of community knowledge among some that they're access points, but it's not available to the general public. And then they're not being maintained. And then you get a new property owner that, gets very upset. And I really think there's been a trend over the years to, the town hasn't taken the lead on making sure that it's monitoring and speaking up for the public interest. In a lot of these cases, we have a lot of property owners who do a really great job advocating for themselves, hiring lawyers, being really on top of these particular places. And in the past, I feel like we've really kind of acquiesced sometimes in terms of not, I've heard of, little agreements where it was like, okay, well, this is going to stay an access point, but the town agrees not to print, this access point in the, the parks and recreation map and, little things like that. And it's hard when there's been a history of a dispute where, a property owner puts a fence up, and it takes, in order for us to even become aware of it, a lot of the time, it takes a citizen that, has knowledge of this being a historic public access point, and then they let the town know. And then we end up sending them a letter. In this case, we sent a letter a long time ago. Well, it's been a year, and there's still a fence. So I'd really like us to come up with a better strategy in the future of, kind of taking stock of all of these access points and making sure that we go around and monitor. And I think maybe that's partially just our responsibility as select board members too, to kind of be looking and pointing these things out. But it's really, Sherman's Cove in particular is just such a sad story, because historically in all of the town tourist brochures and things, you'll see pages and pages featuring Sherman's Cove. It used to be called Thorndike Park. The town owned that entire point at one point, and we just never recognized the value of it. And so slowly we've really lost public access to like this really incredible resource. So I'm really excited to see us actually sort of doing this.
We have one person raising their hand, Allison. I can do it.
Sure. Yep. That's Judy Shelby.
Yep. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Judy, if you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry, I unmuted myself. I'm not used to this. Yeah, I just wanted to voice my strong support to what Allison just said.
Judy, please identify yourself, please. You're not in video.
Oh, you want my video? Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry. I'm not used to doing this online. Yeah, I just wanted to voice my strong support because I am actually one of the people who's come forward ever since I moved to town 12 years ago from Lincolnville, when I heard from an old fisherman that there was public access down there. And I know at that time, whoever the code enforcement officer was, he verified that. And he told me to go to the conservation people to have them put it on their map so the public would know. And then over the years, I've gone down there and it's still not marked. And then most recently, there's that gated part. And I just feel that, you know, if we don't intervene at this time, it's going to slip away permanently because there's more and more houses down there. And I think they assume, some of those newer residents, that, you know, in fact, that is their property. So, and I believe in town, there's so little access, public access to the water as is, if you don't own a place, that it's really critical that we hold on to the little bit we have and clarify, you know, some of the other ones that Allison mentioned.
Thank you, Judy. It's good to hear you and see you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Not to worry, I have trouble with that. I do it every day. So we're going to just go back to, thanks. Is that it, Judy? I'm going to go back to your.
Yes, I just think there's been so much confusion around this because I was back and forth with Allison and different people last year and saw a lot of those documents she's talking about. You know, and it's very confusing as to exactly where the boundaries are and how the public can access it.
Completely understood. Thanks for commenting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How do I?
She took. How do I click? Sounds like me, Allison. But anyway, select board. Audra, is this funds? We talked a lot about Sherman's Cove, and I get that one really clearly. Is there? Has there been done? The other locations, I believe, on Marine and Harbor Drive and have those been surveyed in the past or not?
That's a good question for Bill Kelly.
Mr. Kelly.
Once upon a time, we also litigated the location of the boundary line on Marine Avenue. And yes, that has been established, as has the northerly bound of this Sherman's Point Road to the harbor, to Sherman's Cove. Harbor, I don't know that one offhand. So I can't tell you that. Okay. I don't think there was a lawsuit over that one, so it doesn't come to mind.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, it hasn't been maintained. You can go there now, and it's there's like a little path, but you really it's like for those who know, basically. And then there seems to be another one with Norumbega Drive that's a little bit unclear. That study from 1989 or 1994. I know there have been a couple updates to it, but I guess what I would hope is that we would go through that basically and provide an updated version of that to clarify what has been done since then, and then do the follow up from the recommendations of 1989, I guess.
Bobby, who's responsible for this work? Is it the select board? Is it the harbor committee? Is it a joint piece of work with the harbor committee and the select board? Who's taking the lead on this action?
Well, the town will do the surveying in the area down at the end of those. The harbor committee takes no actions. They make recommendations, of course. I mean, we could certainly do that. In the past, they've been advised of these and discussed these. This is just an approval of the select board to funds so town operations can go and do their thing to make sure we have meets and bounds and the boundaries correctly identified.
Cool.
And it's a little complicated because I realize it's like 100 years of history here.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah, yeah.
history.
Fascinating, by the way. It's a good read.
It is. It was a complete history of Camden. And to Allison's point, Bob, the scope and scale of access points are outlined in Terry Calderwood's 1994 report. So that would really be the overall scope and scale. And now to returning to today, the agenda item for 20,000, though, is really, Audra, just for the Sherman's Point, Sherman Cove? Or,
Not necessarily.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm hoping that I'm hopeful we don't need to use that money at all. And, you know, based on what we know, we can just sort of go through and reestablish all of those boundary lines.
So those funds, in theory, would be available, again, back to Terry Calderwood's 1994 document, could be available to do further research, do further surveying for all of those access points, in theory.
That's why the number is $20,000. Otherwise, Sherman's Cove is going to cost $20,000 of survey work.
Thank you, Audra. Thank you, Bob.
So Sherman's, just to make sure we're using the right words here, because all of these relate to Sherman's Cove, but Sherman's Point Road is
Thank you, Al.
the area where we have it very well surveyed on one side, but you know, some lost territory or unknowns on the other side. But the overall goal being to find the best possible avenues for public access to Sherman's Cove. Maybe it'll turn out that Norwood Avenue is a slam dunk in it.
Right.
I mean, not Norwood.
Norwood
Definitely isn't gonna.
No, Norwood's gonna be a tough walk.
Yeah.
But
then Harbor Road has that nice access point that's all, you can get down there. And that's what we should be doing ultimately for Sherman's Point Road too, is probably our best candidate there for. There should be some way. It's impossible to get you you go over there now and you can sort of scurry down. I would ask everybody to go over there and try to get down there. It's very difficult.
But for the time being, let's make sure we survey everything, right?
Here we go.
Totally.
All right. So Audrey, to keep us up to speed on all of this activity as we go forward, do I have a motion to approve the funds requested for this activity? And not in Sherman's Cove, but in the correction that Allison made, which is correct, to the various access points to Sherman's Cove along that stretch of our coast.
And to be funded from contingency, is that what we're proposing?
Yes, thank you, Allison. It should be clear that I would suggest that the board consider taking this from contingency. The $20,000, yes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. That was quick. Any discussion from anybody else? Not seeing any raised hands or whatever the heck. Go for roll call.
Can I just, before we leap off, just in terms of ultimate goals, are we looking for a type of deed release that we saw in 2013 from the Passieres? Would that be one of the best case scenarios?
Bill?
I guess it might. I know, that's okay. All right, I'm going to leave it at that then. Because everybody's kind of going, well, I don't know what the best case are.
Yeah, I think my hope, what I can ultimately bring to you all is sort of a plan for each area of how we can improve it so that, it's a more obvious and more accessible pathway for the public to use to get down to Sherman's Cove.
Right.
Thank you.
I'll leave it that vague because
it was very good, Audra. I'm just going to let you go. There it is.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Sophie. Sophie.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
I'm so happy.
I know. However we get there, Allison, we'll get down there to the water somehow.
Bob, aye. Also 5-0. Thank you very much, all of you, for that update and vote. We have a last action item, which is related to the appointment of an interim MSAD 28 and 5-town CSD school board director due to the resignation, I believe, of an existing director in the person of Rick Thackeray.
Yes, so just to give you a little background, recently one of Camden's representatives to MSAD 28 and the 5-town CSD resigned from that position. And and I put the statute in your packet because that's one of the little known responsibilities of the select board, is that if you have a school district representative who resigns in the middle of their term, the select board appoints an interim director. And Rick Thackeray was put forward because apparently Rick plans on running for the position during the November election, when that position will be filled for the remainder of its term. And so the idea was that Rick would be appointed as the interim person. And his name was suggested by the sort of the chair of the school board, who's also a Camden representative.
When would his activity commence?
I believe that they wanted him to start when they have their board retreat in August, early August.
I saw some hands come up. I'm not sure if Mark or Allison. Allison. Sorry.
Go ahead, Allison.
So I think Rick would be an outstanding choice. I think my only contribution tonight would be that I would prefer to see us wait until our next meeting to do this. I think just from a process perspective in general, the school board representatives are elected by the public, and that when that person isn't able to do it, that there should be just a little bit more of a process to alert, the general public that there is a vacancy, and that probably most people don't even know that Elizabeth Noble has resigned. And it would be, if we were to wait, then 2 weeks, that would give everybody a chance to think about it a little bit. If there are other candidates that really wanted to come forward and ask to be considered, or things that the general public wanted us to consider, that would allow for that review process. And so I would just be more comfortable with it in 2 weeks. It just feels a little bit rubber stampish. But
Mark, you had your hand up.
I think Allison has a good point. And I was going to ask, and Audra had mentioned that I know that this is a 3-year term that was just elected in June, I believe, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was the year before. Maybe I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't for the entire term, that there is an election. The town will have a chance to vote on it in November. With that, I'm glad to hear that.
In 2 years, Elizabeth was elected a year ago, June.
A year ago, June. That's correct.
As a write-in, as I recall.
And it was because because of COVID, she wasn't able to go out and get because she was a previous school board. She was already on the board. She didn't have a chance to get her stuff in because of COVID.
Sophie.
Yeah, quickly. So, Alison, are you proposing that the town actually puts a notice to let people know that there's a vacancy? And so, because if we wait 2 weeks to appoint this person in the hopes that some people will volunteer, we have to do something to let people know that there's this opportunity. Or are you just wanting to table this vote for 2 weeks? I'm just confused about.
I mean, sure, yes.
How you want to handle it?
I'm not trying to be overly obstructionist, because I'm also a realist, and I know that the demand is probably not massive, but I do think that the right thing to do would be to just at least put something out on our website. I mean, what we do is we put the agenda out. So to me, that since the agenda for our meetings only comes out a few days before the actual meeting, that's not time for a whole newspaper cycle. So by delaying it 2 weeks, we've at least done the bare minimum of it's been on this agenda, which was available for a few days, and then it'll be on another. So that serves like the minimal purpose of giving public notice. If we wanted to take an additional step and put it, I don't feel the need to really put it on the website and do a massive appeal to get candidates to compete or whatever. Just just kind of an avoidance of people feeling like, oh, well, they just already all decided this. So
which we are, but in some ways. But so the other question I have is that, does the school board function without this position?
they don't have another meeting until August. So
So we're not holding up the
I
process.
talked to Patrick before the meeting quickly, just to make sure that it wasn't causing them any problems if we waited for 2 weeks. And he said that it wouldn't cause them any problems, and that, that he thought Rick was a great candidate, as do I, but that there wouldn't be any harm in waiting for 2 weeks. And
It's a board decision. We want to table this to the 20th. We can do so, but that would be the next meeting, obviously. The meeting after that would be August 3rd. So if I can read the calendar correctly. So if we want to table it, that's up to the board. If we want to act on it, I'll listen to a motion either to table or to approve.
I'll follow Allison's lead and make a motion that we table it till the next meeting.
And I will second that.
Motion made and second. Discussion. Not hearing any. Roll call vote. Sophie?
No.
Allison?
yes,
Mark?
Aye.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes, I.
And Bob is aye also. 4-1, the motion passes to bring it to July 20. Next on our agenda is, that's the end of the action items. We have 2 discussion items, the first of which is the discussion on the Mid-Coast Internet transitional bylaws and articles of incorporation. I guess probably we should let you lead this, Audra.
Yes. So the Mid-Coast Internet Development Corporation, we had a sort of a discussion about the bylaws. I believe at our last meeting when you appointed Matt Siegel to the board of directors. And since then, the corporation came out with draft bylaws, and there was some, discussion on timeframes for, giving the member towns a chance to review the bylaws and not approve them, because that is the responsibility of the board, but just make sure that there was buy-in from all the member towns or the, the towns that were poised to become member towns, just to make sure that everybody was comfortable with the language that was put forth in the bylaws. And so in order for the corporation to be able to move forward with some of the work that they need to do, including the feasibility study and some of the decisions that need to be made around that, it was suggested, and I believe the board of directors agreed to transitional bylaws. And we wanted to bring them back in front of the select board just to have a look at them. And also just let everybody know that the draft bylaws are available, and they're looking for, feedback and input. Bill Kelly and myself have been very involved in that, and absolutely Matt can answer very detailed questions about all of that as well. But that's just sort of, our commitment to making sure that, we're keeping on top of what's going on with Mid-Coast Internet Development Corporation, and, myself and Matt and Bill are communicating it all back to you. And so that's why we wanted to just bring these in front of you and answer any questions and just have a discussion if that's what the board was interested in doing.
Okay. Board questions on Audra's procedure? I know there are, go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to take advantage of the fact that Bill Kelly is here. Are there any doom and gloom scenarios that you see for how this may put the town at risk? My reading of it, I haven't been able to identify a major risk to the town, since the corporation doesn't have the ability to assess the town. It didn't seem to be a risky thing to me, but do you see things that we should be speaking up about?
No, I don't. There's some fine tuning that needs to be done, as Audra said, shopping these documents around to the folks who are going to be in the municipalities that will be involved, and some fine tuning to make sure, on your point, that as we're doing the drafting now, we set the documents up and the nonprofit corporation in the best case possible for it to, when it gets to that point, borrow money if and when it needs to independently. But we'll need to do some work on that, and that's what we're doing sort of behind the scenes. Audra and I have been discussing that and getting some a little bit of expert help to make sure that we haven't missed what we should put in the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, which are sometimes overlooked but are sort of important documents for anyone that we're going to be dealing with in the future who has either regulatory or borrowing authority or bonding authority. Just no point in not measuring 3 times here before we cut.
Okay.
We're fortunate, Bill, one of our longstanding bond counsel, Bill and him have worked together, and he's got good expertise in that particular area. So Bill's been reaching out to him, and they've been working together just to, make sure that, we're just setting the corporation up really well for success and doing everything we can to address any sort of concerns that some of the potential member towns, including ourselves, might have.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
Oh, I'm delighted this is happening. Thank you so much. To be honest, I haven't had a chance to read them, but I will read them and share any thoughts or comments, since I'm the one who brought it up, right?
If you knew the amount of time we have laid.
No, but don't worry, Matt. I'm not trying to.
No, I'm
reinvent the
teasing.
wheel
I'm
or do anything,
teasing.
but I feel responsible for at least giving it a good read, since I'm the one who brought the point.
It is a fascinating read, and I won't be cheeky, Bob, at all, except to say that we've worked very hard and really appreciate all the input from people like Mr. Kelly and from Audra, because it is a team effort, and we have gone so far as to design them and draft them and redraft them. And it's really beneficial to have the input from all the communities, all the professionals who do this for a living. So we've done our best, and there are little things that you should note, Sophie, when you do take a look. As people make comments, even over the last couple of weeks, initially, for instance, the duration of the term of the board of directors, we made the change from 5 years to 3 years. In section 9.1, because some of the people wanted specific language, to Audra's point, that the development corporation would have no taxing authority. So with Bill's help and some others, you'll see in section 9.1, front and center is the statement that we have no taxing authority. That was one of the major things that people wanted to see in what we call the interim bylaws.
Right. I did read them, and I did make a few comments, as you know, Matt.
Absolutely.
90% there, but to Bill's point, it's more than 10% is about clarification and making sure that the statements have been on the same page. It just needs to be documented correctly.
Yep.
To make sure no question later. Okay, so we'll keep moving forward.
Oh, and just to update you all, myself and Bill have been asked to speak to the Thompson Select Board tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock about the bylaws. So yeah, we're just going to be meeting with them to kind of explain why we're comfortable with with proceeding. So
okay, great. That's good news.
That's great. Yep.
Thank you,
So
Conley.
with that, we'll move on to our second discussion item, and provide a little background about the Lake Warden here, Audra. This just, I think Sophie knows, Budget Committee, and Matt may not, that we refund, how much is it, $5,000 or $7,000?
$5,600.
$5,600 a year to fund this Lake Warden position. Audra, why don't you lead the discussion as to why this is on the agenda?
Certainly. So this is a position that's gone through quite the changes over the years. So in the past, there was I think he was a reserve police officer, had the role of lake warden, dam control agent, and a few other different town responsibilities. It was a gentleman by the name of Ken Bailey. And when Ken retired, that responsibility, there was a lot of discussion about it sitting within the police department, going to Parks and Rec, a number of different options for who would take on the lake warden responsibilities. And at some point it went to the Watershed Association. And so there was not anything in writing, but there's been sort of a unspoken agreement over the years where the town pays the Watershed Association $5,600 a year for the lake warden position, and they patrol the lake and do some, boater safety and education stuff, and just talk to people around the lake about observing, laws and rules. So kind of fast forward to last year, or even the year before that, there had been some issues with moorings at the Route 52 boat launch and at the 105 Bog Bridge boat launch. And so that got into a discussion about, does Camden want an inland harbor? If so, do we pass an ordinance? What are the repercussions of passing that ordinance? It would be an inland harbor master. It would be sort of a whole program to enforce an inland harbor ordinance. And so kind of the idea was appointing or making the lake warden into an inland harbor master. And even though they wouldn't necessarily have any real enforcement authority, it's more of just having somebody out there kind of trying to direct people as to where they should place moorings to be more safe, and also trying to mitigate some of the conflicts between the different user groups at Barrett's Cove. That was really the big interest on behalf of the town, because there was a lot of recognition of the fact that, motorized boaters and the rowing club and the group of swimmers that all operate from Barrett's Cove were just like a lot of different users, and a high chance of conflict between them all. And the hope was that the newly appointed inland harbor master position would sort of help to mitigate some of these conflicts. So that sort of led to the appointment of the inland harbor master, and kind of leads us back now to this discussion about what do we want to do with all of that. And I know that this is sort of a new issue that some of the new select board members might be kind of hearing about for the first time, but just wanted to sort of kick off that discussion and get everybody's sense of where they would like to go with this.
Okay. Allison, go ahead.
So I think there was also some additional funding that went along with the appointment of the inland harbor master that I'm unsure if that has made it into our budget this year or not. We maybe as a select board neglected to talk about that issue. I know when we did the appointment, there was talk then about following up and seeing how it went. And I think it's probably time that we do that. It's been this is one from my perspective, and I'm sure there'll be a few that'll say, oh no, she has it all wrong. But this is one of those things that's been like for way too long been, well, it's always been done this way. And this was the agreement that so-and-so was going to do it. And if you start to say, well, how did we select this person, or what is the job description, or who really are they working for the Watershed Association? Are they working for the town? All of that is very loose and includes a lot of, this is the way it's been done in the past. We have a really pretty well-functioning Watershed Association. And so I think that has kind of made it easy sometimes in the past for the town not to pay attention to some of these things. The Watershed Association is great. They do a lot of great things, but it's also a little bit more of a homeowners association for property owners. And so there's I think it is time that we have, maybe a presentation from the past, Lake Warden / Inland Harbor Master.
Yeah.
There was, a report months ago on some recommendations that were made by him that included, a dog accessible ramp or float and some dredging and, a few things that made me like kind of go, whoa, dredging in Barrett's Cove. And I think it's a bigger topic that we need to be more knowledgeable about. The mooring issue is going to rear its head again. It's a little bit like the Wild West out on the lake right now with all of these moorings and the zipping around of there are a lot of things that could be focused on for enforcement, everything from speed to, the placement of moorings, and that it's kind of our job now as a select board to say, okay, if we're going to use town funds to pay somebody's salary that's going to be patrolling the lake, we need to be a little bit more on top of what the priorities are there. So
Sophie, you had your hand up, Sophie. You're muted,
Yes.
Sophie.
Yeah, sorry. So my first question is, what are our responsibilities in managing these areas, and what are our potential liabilities? And what are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to manage the area because we're responsible for it, or are we trying to manage conflict or to, organize usage? What are we trying? What is it?
exactly, that's the whole issue.
Can you address that?
We can't define that well right now.
So I'd say, we kind of delved into this when, this first came up. So it really was in reaction to the fact that, Lincolnville had a moratorium on moorings in McGonagall Lake, and they were concerned that they would end up like, and it wasn't just McGonagall, sorry, it was Norton Pond as well. They were concerned that they would end up like Camden with all the moorings at the Route 52 boat launch. And so, that kind of sparked well, should we be doing something about this here in Camden? And we had a special town meeting about it. And ultimately, voters did not approve the moratorium on new moorings. And there was some interest in the town moving forward with looking at this issue more comprehensively. Bill Kelly did a lot of work on, the looking into the statute and what we could do. And, really it is creating a whole new program with, identifying an inland harbor and an inland harbor master and everything that's associated with sort of managing that. And short of doing that, it's all, because it's all submerged land, it's really the state's responsibility. Right. And our responsibility really kind of ends at the property that we own on the shore. That being said, we do own, and I wonder if Beth is still on. She could talk to you sort of about all of the usage that we're getting at the island.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to drive at Sophie's point too. What to the next step, Audra? What would be a smart way to approach getting information from either Watershed Association or, Lake Warden, Inland Harbor Master? What do we call to the table to have this discussion?
Well, I would recommend, what Allison said, getting sort of the Lake Warden to come in and do a bit of a presentation about what it is they do, and Paul Leeper as well, who's the executive director of the Watershed Association. So getting both Paul and Dale to kind of come in and talk about, what it is they do and what the priorities are. Also, there was talk about, the police having more of a presence on the lake and having some scheduled patrols using the public boat. And so that's something I'd also recommend getting Randy here to sort of talk about, what the police department might be able to do, and, how it could kind of fit in with, the select board's sort of, if the interest still is on trying to sort of mitigate conflicts amongst different users at heavily used areas like Barrett's Cove or the 105 boat launch.
Right.
You know, Randy could answer any questions that you have about that.
Okay. To that end, also we should get, there was a committee report that was written by, well, I think Taylor was on that committee,
Yeah.
that including Paul Leeper. There's a document there. We should revisit that, especially Matt, so if you haven't seen that yet.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, that's really important. They did a lot of really good work on that.
So we want to put this on the next agenda or so? Is that what, okay.
And I think it's also worth bringing up, there was an LD that was sort of making its way through.
What's an LD?
Oh, sorry, a piece of legislation that was making its way through the Agriculture, Conservation, Forestry Committee about towns having to, even if they didn't have an inland harbor or an inland harbor master, still having to appoint someone to answer questions about moorings and stuff like that on lakes and ponds, which is, it was an absolutely crazy LD, but well, yeah, I mean, it just goes to show this is something that is kind of popping up all over the place, and people are feeling frustrated about the lack of sort of information or oversight of this, because, you know, truly, if the town isn't regulating it, it all falls to state statute, and that can be confusing and unclear and leave things, you know, more open than a lot of people.
Just before we go, Audra, could you just, you know, flesh that future agenda item on who should be invited, and we can put it on the when going forward.
Yeah, would that be something everybody would like to see come back at the next meeting?
Yeah.
So, easy enough to get Paul. I mean, Paul he reads the agenda. He wanted to know if he needed to come on this meeting. So
that's a good point. If we want to get heads nodding one way or another, and Allison, you were nodding your head the other way.
So it's okay. Well, the annual meeting for the McGonagall Watershed Association is a direct conflict with our next meeting. So I feel like a little bit bad. I know I really wanted this to be on the agenda, but I definitely didn't want it to be like a conversation that we were having about the Watershed Association without them here, because honestly, there's just a huge learning curve here, and I can't remember everything that I've learned in the past about this. And so Paul is we really can't have a good conversation without getting the overview from Paul. My thinking has evolved a little bit since the last time we had a meeting about this. I think we just need to start with, before we get into all of our own opinions, really, is just getting up to speed on the facts. And maybe that is more than just a select board meeting. I don't know, but.
Well, if that's a conflict, we probably should look out to August 3rd, whatever the first meeting in August is, because I agree, Paul is an important person to bring in, one of the authors of that report, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, Audrey, if you could flesh out who all that should be, we could look at August 3rd. Mr. Kelly.
Just if I can suggest that you recruit or re-recruit Taylor. Taylor was neck deep in this. We had many conversations. I went to a couple of their board meetings, but I think he had a really good handle and would be a great resource from the Camden perspective. If you could drag him back at the next meeting.
Well, we can offer him. We'll give him an offer we can't refuse. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Moving on then to our updates. We have two. One is thanks to Augustine doing some action in June 21st, we'll be resuming in-person meetings for basically scheduled town meetings on effective, tomorrow. I mean, it should have been sooner. We could have even done tonight, but I thought we would be more appropriate to, do this Zoom seminar and say for select board, it will be two things. One, Thursday, we have priorities and goals meeting, among other things we're going to work on, and that's scheduled. That will be a live meeting, as well as July 20th, 2 weeks from today. Again, scheduled meetings only. It doesn't mean we can't have. We did a great listening session, Allison, with a bunch of people in the public. We did that on a webinar format. We can still do that. We're going to have, I'm sure, a lot of those there's advantages. of that model. But anyway, that's just a statement of fact. Thanks for sending the statute to us, Bill. I appreciate it. Allison, go ahead.
I just have a few thoughts that in a lot of ways, this transition to having to do everything on Zoom has been much better for a large segment of the population that before was not able to come to our meetings. And so for years and years, we've excluded people who can't be at 6:30 evening meetings. And by going to this digital format, we were able, so many more people have been able to participate. So I think that it's really important that we continue to make it an option so that it's as easy and possible to participate virtually as it is to be there in person. Otherwise, we are just continuing to skew the involvement. I personally, for the select board goals and priorities workshop, I guess I would just like to ask that we make it possible to participate in that virtually if need be. Like when we scheduled that, I did that knowing that, like, thinking that I might be able to participate virtually if I had to. So, and then also another thing, just with our committees, some of them, the ones that continue to meet, for instance, the Camden Rockford Pathways Committee, because it's it's not just Camden, it's a joint one. And so they've continued to meet and they had a discussion about this and just wanted me to pass along that they would like to continue to meet virtually. I think it was quarterly that they would be doing in person, but for the majority of people, it continued to work better to hold the meetings virtually. So I just want to be careful that we're not setting, and hopefully what we've learned from all of this is that we can be a little bit more flexible in the ways that we allow people to meet and get involved, and that we don't just revert back to this, like, well, you have to be here in person for everything kind of mentality.
We'll work through all of those. And by the way, Allison, to your point, the state statute really, the select board doesn't say you have to do committees or those kind of in other organizations. That's why it says scheduled town meetings. I don't consider committees in that group. But I get you. I thought we'd agreed to Thursday being live when we scheduled that meeting, but you know what? We're not going to be ogres about it. And also, I think, also that statute does address even select board members being able to be under certain circumstances as written. If somebody's out of the state, for example, can call in even the interim until we get I'm hoping soon, our well-heeled hybrid that'll keep us involving in person and not in person as we go forward. That's good. And we've established that as a priority and we're going to get it done. So I agree. So
can I ask a
anyway,
legal question real quick? Since we have Bill here, it relates just exactly to this topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've heard conflicting things over the years about the legality of virtual participation. And I think I've heard it from you, Bill, that it's not necessary in the past has not been considered, this was all pre-COVID, considered best practice, but that there's actually nothing to prevent a select board member from participating virtually in the event that, can you just elaborate on that and give us like the rules as they stand from your perspective?
So pre-COVID, yes, I have advised towns for years that as long as the select board member, for example, who is remote, can hear and be heard by everyone. So it's basically the same thing that we're doing right now. And then that's a legitimate way to conduct business. It's not the best practice because, how far could you go? Can you have 3 members absent, 1 member in a room, and 3 members are participating, not absent, but they're participating remotely. So you have a quorum of 4, but only 1 person physically present. Now, if you talk to MMA about this pre-COVID, they would have said, no, that doesn't work. You've got to physically have a public proceeding in person, and 3 people remotely and 1 physically present is not enough. The statute didn't say that. It just says that public proceedings have to be open and available to the public so that they can participate meaningfully and be heard.
Right.
We have a bit of a game changer now with the statute, in that the statute now directly addresses this point, and oddly says that select board members can be absent as long as they have basically a good excuse under the 3 or 4 criteria.
Right.
But it does not expressly say that the public can do the same thing.
Correct.
So my view, because I've been asked this question, is I think it's a poorly drafted statute. I don't think it necessarily passes the straight face test in being rational, in that a select board member, because they have a broken leg or they got a virus, they don't want to participate, that's okay. And when that happens, the public can participate remotely. But if all the select board members are present, then the public has to be present. Well, that's a sort of an irrational way to look at how a public meeting is held. Either it works when there's a remote participation, or it doesn't from a due process perspective. So I've been suggesting people, such as you're going to do, is you create your hybrid model as you wish. And as long as people can hear and be heard, we'll call it good. I think this is one of these sort of statutes that's taking a best practice concept and trying to make it a law, and it doesn't really work well.
I would agree, Bill. I think that's their definition of when a select board member, for example, can be, they tried to address it very poorly, actually, in terms of whether the emergency or urgent issue, so that they cannot travel to the meeting location with a significant. Yeah, I agree. So establishing the hybrid makes all that go away. But for the select board members, though, and we can discuss this even on Thursday, we need to decide what general criterion we want. This is not a matter of convenience, because we can discuss this, but the statute clearly says there's certain criterion for the absence of a select board member. For example, the United States, clear. It's very clear. But just because you don't want to come, we have to discuss that. Yeah, I think that's important. But anyway, just so we'll look toward the 20th, and each week, each meeting will hopefully improve, so we can affect some of the benefits of what we've seen over the last year as we improved using the webinar format, as we also allow the public to come back, as we've had a number of requests from the public to come back also. I don't generally state that the attendance on meetings is low, but anyway, that's the substance of it. I think we're on the same page. With that, we have also, excuse me, just have to get back to my main page, which is for us to discuss the update at Audra, I presume, on the Washington Street sidewalk rebuilding construction work.
Yeah, so I believe I provided an update to all of you just recently that we received the bids for both the sidewalk from Matthew John Ave to Shirt Tail Point, as well as the Quarry Hill to Maritime Farm sidewalk. And just knowing that those projects were going to be underway, we started sort of looking at where's an area in town where we could rebuild a significant section of sidewalk that is highly used, is in really poor condition, and would have a really major positive impact on the town. So when we started looking at what was in really, really bad condition, it's really the stretch of sidewalk on Washington Street that goes all the way from, kind of like the top of the hill after the public safety building, really to Matthew John Avenue. It's in really poor condition. It's heavily used. It's on a major sort of artery, and it's something that we get complaints about a lot. So that's going to be sort of the big sidewalk rebuilding project of the summer. And we've got, the resources and the expertise and the staff to do it now. So It just makes sense that if, we're going to invest to build a sidewalk out to Shirt Tail Point, that entirety of sidewalk all the way from in town to that location is in good, usable, passable condition. So just wanted to give everybody an update that it's going to be a big project, and we're still kind of working on, exactly when we're going to be able to get started, but it's something that we're excited to do. And I think it's really sort of, demonstrating that that's an important investment for the town, and that's a stretch of road that we want to take care of and do a better job making it accessible for pedestrians.
Questions, anybody on that one? It's exciting, Audra. We're finally getting there. And you'll be able to update us when you get schedule information from whomever.
Absolutely. We'll give you an update on that project as we have more developed on it.
Okay, very good.
If I
No, Sophie, go.
just quickly, I've heard, a lot of people are complaining about road work, and I'm like, well, yeah, don't complain to me, because it's a short annoyance for a long-term gain. So I totally support road work, but it might be interesting to post the schedule of construction on our Facebook town page, so people have access to it and have more visible of when is it going to be where, just as an information to our fellow Camdenites.
Absolutely, especially if we have to do anything that's going to in any way obstruct the roadway or slow things down or choke it up. We definitely will communicate that.
All right, then on to our last item is select board agenda, which is select board reports. Mr. Ratner, do you want to lead?
Sure, I'll lead. I have two items. Number one, I just wanted to say something quick about budgets again. As I mentioned, the Snowball, I'm both a huge supporter and also look very closely at the budget. And I thought maybe in the future, it might be a great idea to have the person responsible for the budget either write a memo or speak to the changes in the budget before we go over it. So we don't have to sit there and pick it apart and then say, well, we're doing this because of that. It'd be nice to have a thing saying, well, this is up because of the management, instead of answering questions from us after. I'd like to see a memo ahead of time about the changes in the budget so we understand the changes. The only thing I'll mention tonight, I was downtown last week walking across the street, and I noticed that our crosswalks, and some in particular, the one by Walgreens, is pretty much totally wiped out in the road. If you're driving, you cannot see that there is a crosswalk there, which I think is a dangerous situation. I'm sure Dave is totally aware of it. I'm sure that they got plans to do it, but I just wanted to bring it up so that people are aware that if they're crossing the street, look closely at the cars, make sure they see you, because our crosswalks are pretty invisible right now. And hopefully they'll be, I know Dave always works on recreating them, but they're as bad as I've ever seen.
Good point, Mark.
It's all, just quickly say that's just a reminder that that's a state road and a federal highway that is, undergoing major construction. And so it's really the DOT project area. And one of the things that they've done is they've taken some of those crosswalk markers and put those out. But you're absolutely right. It's very hard to see, but it is not a town administered area.
Well, and it's all sort of wrapped up in this project that we have going on. So sort of the very last phase, and hopefully that happens this week, is there going to be micro milling the crosswalks down because of the residual sort of like textured maroon crosswalk there. So that'll be milled down, and then they'll repaint it in the sort of white piano key style. So hopefully that should happen within the week.
Right. They've already started, Audra, with the grinding of some sections of that by machine to get whatever you call that orange thing out. And you're right. But Mark's good point. We'd be anxious to get that done. Allison, do you have any select board reports?
Yeah, so Bob and I spent about 6 hours listening and holding conversations about with an update on our the grant we have from the Maine Coastal Program for the redesign slash removal of the Montgomery Dam and redesign of the Harbor Park seawall. There's a lot of past discussion that's gone into this, but just sort of to remind everybody, all of those are on YouTube. We got some help from Tony Grassi, who's a Camden resident who's been very involved in the past in both dam removal and river restoration along the Penobscot, as well as historic preservation of a dam and mills. He's the sort of visionary behind the Freedom Mills lost kitchen space. So we have a grant right now that is basically giving us the opportunity to do our very best at designing a solution there that would both restore some habitat and also make the town more resilient to climate change, both sea level rise and inland flooding. This doesn't mean that any decision has been made yet. Everybody's aware this will be a town vote at some point, but we do have this grant. And so the task is to use that funding, which is not available for just any purpose. It's available for the purpose of designing a climate resilient solution. And so we did a lot of, we unveiled and sort of shared some concept designs. We got some feedback from people. We have those talks available on YouTube, gives more of the history of it, but just so, you know, it's gonna be a thing that's gonna come to the select board. It's a discussion to be having with the library, and it would be good. I know I think you, Matt, I know both of you, Sophie and Matt, have been sort of up to speed a little bit on it, but that we did that and got some good input on the spot, but then also we've been getting emails, and I'm sure it's something that you guys will probably, you know, hear about. And yeah, I don't know if Bob wants to add anything to that, but that's basically.
No, I think it was very, I think it's trying to relay the message to the public about all of the tremendous amount of work, including the pending finalization of a 250-page feasibility report on the river total is a lot to consume, is a lot to people to consume. And I always get a little surprised when the questions that come up, and I said, you know, and I always assume people know all of that stuff, but they don't. They just can't be that connected. And a number of people stopped me after, in Hannaford, and said, I learned a lot from that. And for me, it's an eye opener, because I always think everybody knows everything we know. Well, not so true. It was good. And honestly, Allison, I think we had 3 of them during the week, and each one got a little bit better because we were trying to meld ourselves toward the audience too, realizing the questions they were coming up with and the complications of where we're going. It's not right. It was good.
It was good. We also had we were really lucky to have Matt Bernier from NOAA joining us for all of them, and it's really he's been involved in the technical review of both the Montgomery Dam feasibility study and also the broader watershed study, and is a real expert on engineering and the climate science that goes along with our area and the reasons why we have the grants to begin with. So one of the things that came out was really, it's really difficult to explain to people the threat posed by inland flooding. People, you know, kind of understand sea level rise, but the reason, you know, big reason why we have funding available right now to design a Montgomery Dam removal scenario is because we are really in the flood zone for this. The downtown is really significantly impacted by the Montgomery Dam and these extreme storm events that we're seeing. So trying to find sort of ways of explaining to people how dams work, how the Montgomery Dam works, how it raises the flood profile, what's involved for town staff to be monitoring that. And then also looking at, okay, there are a lot of different ways that we could design dam removal to look differently depending on what the goals are aesthetically. So it's, you know, it's a complicated topic, but it's actually really exciting because there are just millions and millions of dollars available for projects like this if we can work together and do it right.
Absolutely. Matt or Sophie, do you have anything you want to add at this point? Matt?
Two quick points, Bob. First of all, Allison and Bob, thank you for those presentations. I was able to listen to one, and it was terrific. And I'll just anecdotally say that I've had family in town this week, and one of the places I took them down to the Montgomery Dam and started talking to them about restoration, and the young people were excited about it, the old people were excited about it. So I think we're really onto something special there. So thank you both for your hard work. And then just a second point would be to thank Bob and Audra. In the Hannafords, as I've been joking with Bob, I now, Allison, you should have told me that I'm going to become the Hannaford celebrity. I had no idea that it would no longer be safe to go to Hannafords. But so the feedback as that celebrity in Hannafords, as Bob knows, has been about the corner at French and Braun, and Audra and Bob have been terrific about the build height and the angle of the ramp that people thought it was dangerous. So I just want to thank Audra and Bob for looking into that, and for Dave St. Laurent for being on it with the Maine DOT. Thank you all.
Oh, can I just say that anyone that complains about that or thinks it's wrong, you are absolutely right. It needs to be fixed.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something it was brought up from the beginning as a problem. And everybody who's noticed it, you are absolutely right.
You know, there's a word, there's a professional engineering, which Bob looks, the word is oops.
Oops.
It's a professional engineering term we use.
Some people have a challenge with spelling ADA. But anyway, onward. Sophie. Nothing. Okay, good. Audra, do you have any hot buttons you want to relay?
Well, I was going to reiterate what I just said, which is everyone who's pointed out that it's wrong is absolutely correct about that Mechanic Street tip down. So we're working on trying to get information from MDOT on when it's going to be fixed.
That's
so
good.
We'll let everybody know as soon as we get that back.
As said, everybody, Dave was all over this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So God bless him.
So
with that, I'd like to.
Oh, sorry,
Audra,
a couple other things. I just wanted to let everyone know we're going to have the first meeting with the parking management study group on July 30th. That'll be at 10 o'clock. John Burke, our consultant, will be coming to town then, and the group will be getting together, and that'll be sort of the initial meeting that we have. And after that, it'll probably be about 4 to 5 meetings of that group. And it'll go from July probably through till October, maybe early November. And then we'll have, really good sort of findings and recommendations on how we move that forward.
Audra, just on that topic, if I may, can I see the terms of reference that were used to select the consultant?
Certainly, yep, absolutely. The next thing I had as an update, there's some road striping going on currently on Mechanic Street. I think everybody's seen part of it where we've had sharrows painted on the road, and the last part of that, which will be the fog lines, will be completed tonight. And I think there's some striping going on in some of the other parts of town. And that's all part of the Complete Streets work that we're doing with MDOT and the Heads Up project. I'm trying to think of my last, and I've been spending quite a bit more time than I normally do on the Midcoast Economic Development District, because we're currently doing a search for a new executive director. The previous executive director, Bill Napower, retired on the 2nd of July. So we're looking for Bill's replacement.
Thank you, Audra. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to keep moving along and ask for a motion to adjourn, to leave select board meeting and adjourn as wastewater commissioners. Mark,
I'll make a motion. We adjourn as a select board and reform as the wastewater commission.
Second.
A second.
motion made in second, discussion, roll call, Matt,
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Sophie,
Aye.
and Bob. I also, we should bring on Mr. David Bolstridge, please. There he is, showing up already. Because obviously our discussion as wastewater commissioners is the approval of the wastewater budget, which we had tabled last meeting. While Dave is trying to get unmuted. Here he comes. There we go. Let me get to that.
I
Wastewater
was
budget.
just very happy to see the updates.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dave, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, have to believe it's you because I can't see you, but that's okay. I guess, we have the wastewater budget in front of us here. Maybe Dave, just as in brevity, can you just hit any high points you should think we should be focusing on changes or up or down dramatic changes in the budget from FY20 to FY21 recommended?
Well,
Bob,
something that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting you, Dave. But before we launch into the budget discussion, last time Dave came on the select board, I requested some documents that he agreed to send to me, and I haven't seen them yet. So Audra and Dave, if you could follow up on those requests, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
All right.
Would you mind reminding me?
Yeah,
what-
I'll send you an email with what they were.
That's a good idea.
Thanks.
Dave, but just as as an overview on the wastewater budget, are there any there are a few, I know there are, changes from 20 to 21 that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, the biggest issue was, I've put in the budget some of the things you wanted to see as far as I&I. You look at the GIS update. I've got $40,000 there. I've had a quote from CAI to improve our maps. And
So the Dave, the engineering you're talking about is the 45,000 for engineering professional services. Is that where the money is for I&I?
That as well, we're going to have Wright Pierce help us with another study. And I think with DEP real interested in our I&I issue,
yep,
we'll have a third party looking over our shoulder.
Yep.
And they'll kick out a report that we can share with DEP as well.
Okay, but
so there's two things
that's in that line. That's in that line item, correct?
Yes. Yep. The 45,000 and the 40,000 is for the GIS updates.
Okay. Anything else?
Let's see.
There's just looking at the major changes, not a heck of some in sludge removal increased. I saw there was a
I think the changes that Dave just outlined, those were the only changes since the last time we all saw the budget.
Okay.
Right, and I'm looking at repairs as well for the I&I side, but we have enough money in reserves to do any repair we might have to do.
Yeah, and of course, Audra, just to reinforce another big one that I would believe is we're continuing to increase the wastewater upgrade internet payment reserve, which you might describe that for Sophie and Matt because they weren't party to what we've been, the strategy or tactic which we're taking there.
So yeah, that's the reserve account for the upgrade interest repayment, and it's basically a rate stabilization fund. So the idea is that instead of ratepayers getting hit with the cost of paying the debt service on the plant upgrades in 1 year, we're gradually increasing rates so that by the time we get to the point where we're paying off the debt service, it's less of a jump.
Well, basically, the debt service is probably in the order of $550,000 to $600,000. That doesn't hit the books until they finish construction, which is probably late next year. And that point, when the debt service hits us, this can be reversed and the amount for the debt service comes in and there's no impact on rates. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's just a strategy to ease it in rather than, as you noticed, if you may notice on that account under capital reserves, which is 602066, it's going from 200,000 to 450.
Right.
So, and that's just, it's just a good, it's a way of not doing what I call a thud on a budget. And I think it's a good, smart move because this is a big chunk of money that we're funding, this $12 something million for the wastewater treatment plant, plus the couple of $1 million, I believe it is, for the two stations, right? For the 2 upgrades to pump stations. But I just wanted to point that out. That's a big chunk of money, but it's not. Allison, go ahead.
I just also think that nobody should be under any illusions about rates staying as they are. Rates need to go up and are going to continue to go up. They're budgeted to go up, and then if we do start addressing some of the collection system issues, they're going to need to go up even more. So.
Well, excellent point. Go ahead, Allison. You weren't finished. I interrupted you.
Well, then, I don't know how much of this needs to be saved for another time, but I'm sure anybody reading the paper is kind of curious about, the elephant in the room of Rockport and their announcement that they're going to come up with their own rate system for us, and just, what do we need to do in terms of this budget, if anything, to, account for any of that? Do we need to be concerned about a major revenue shortfall? Do we need to be allocating additional resources for legal fees? Certainly we should, just as a, legislative, or as a sort of a legislative body for this entity, we should be talking about meeting with Rockford and all getting up to speed and understanding the issues here and the interlocal agreement, and there's a lot to unpack, and I want to make sure that we're all well prepared to have that conversation. But do we need to do anything for the budget, I guess, would be my
I know. Yeah, we need to establish a budget to operate the wastewater treatment plant correctly. And I agree, by the way, people need to understand that we mentioned, Allison, there's a chunk of money we threw in there, $45,000, to solve this rather significant I&I problem. We're seeing still large bumps in liquids flowing to our wastewater treatment plants during rain events. So we got to solve that problem. That's why a little bit of big increase. But no, I think we need to look at this as Dave's recommendation, ask questions about it, and we should move to accept, modify, or otherwise move on it. So
does the budget account for any increase in rates, and what does it envision us in terms of a rate structure from Rockport? Are we budgeting for status quo? Are we budgeting for rate increase?
I think that's a broader issue we need to discuss, but we got to approve the budget to run the operation as it is. Whenever rates fall out, for the users, it will fall out. So no, the answer is no.
Well, we're not looking at revenues also at this time. We're only looking at the expense budget.
Yeah, we just think it's premature at this point.
What?
Well, it's like with any other year. So we have our expense budget, and then the rates will be set to cover the revenues needed to.
The action items that may flow to address Rockport or anything will flow in parallel.
I mean, there are, our rates are going up in Camden. Rockport's rates will also have to go up.
Yep.
It's as simple as they're a user of the system.
Mark, you raise your finger there.
Yes. Two things. Number one, people should be aware, as if they look at this budget, that the rates are going up. That when we went through all the information about the updating the wastewater treatment plant, which we have to do, at the time we're going through that, Camden had among the lowest rates in the whole state for wastewater treatment. And it's really important to know we're just now, we'll be rising to be more in line with what's happening in the rest of the state. And I think that's really important to know, that people were getting a serious break. The newspaper article about Rockford saying that if I read it, you know, that they decided they didn't want to pay the rates and they decided they wanted to pay something else, was one of the most creative pieces of fiction I think I've ever read. It was quite amazing.
Let's continue addressing this budget. Do I have any other comments on this budget or questions for Dave Bolstrich? Then do I have a motion to move to accept the budget or change it?
So I just don't understand why the idea that we're not going to talk about revenues. What we have here in presented to us does include revenues.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
And so, and then it gives I mean, I'm not trying to trip anybody up here. I'm just saying, and I'm not arguing against a rate increase by any means, but it does include, it says build, it has build accounts. It projects a significant increase in revenue from, what we're billing for. I'm just curious about, the breakdown of where that comes from, and if any of that needs to be budgeted conservatively, thinking that, maybe how much of our build accounts is Rockford or
Sophie, you had your hand up.
No, but you want to address Allison's question first, or?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
No, he doesn't.
Well, the way I look at it, Allison, is that until we know something about Rockford that's for real, there's nothing we can discuss in the budget. The budget is the budget. A budget is an estimate. It can be over or under. And Dave needs a budget to operate. So that until Rockford tells us X, Y, or Z, there's nothing we can discuss about a revenue shortfall because they decide to change their rate. That's not
what I'm saying though. I'm just asking a very simple question of what is it budgeting for? Is it budgeting for a status quo? There's a history here with how we're billing Rockford, and it's a little different than before. And it's a complicated thing because the interlocal, they were supposed to pay for a portion of the capital improvements, but since they decided not to budget for that, we are rolling it into we're billing it to them through the rate that we're charging them. And so we're going to have to defend this at some point. So it's important to me to just understand where are these numbers coming from? I'm not saying that we don't approve the budget or anything like that. I just want to understand what's budgeted.
Fair question.
Well, Dave, can you just address this budget as I read it? It's business as usual in the sense of the users are getting going to be billed a certain rate based on this budget, and we're going to have to, like Sophie said, later resolve the issue with if there's any issues with Rockport that we haven't resolved today. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, yeah, and I think that looking at Rockport's contribution, I think that wherever we end up, if there is a shortfall, we can bridge this year with reserve funds.
It's a bridge we have yet to cross, but there's no.
That's right. Yeah.
Been no considerations of anybody not paying whatever bill in this budget as I read it. So again, maybe there's some bridges yet to cross. Agreed, and that's the answer to your question, I believe, Allison. And we should move on with approving this or not approving it as selected.
Wait, I did have a question though. Sorry. So my question, and it's a question, to be fair, that I've asked Dave at the budget committee, that this budget is consistently, the actuals come under the budgeted amounts. And as a result of this, it accrues the reserves for the wastewater plant. And Audra, correct me if I'm wrong at any point in what I'm saying. And the issue I see is that we keep budgeting upwards. It's an upward trend in the budget. The actuals come under, but the rate keeps increasing. And so the question I have is, if we're going to be using the reserves for the remodeling or for whatever purpose, I think we really need to advertise this to the water users, not the taxpayers, the water users, right, because they see that rate rate consistently increase. But if they looked at the budget, they would say, wait a second, the way I look at it, you're systematically coming under in your actuals. So what's in it for me?
Right. Well, I think you're.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, David.
Yeah, part of the problem is, we really can't see the future. We do maintenance, preventive maintenance, and sometimes during the we have malfunctions during the year that we don't anticipate. If you look at some of the lines here, for example, the pump station line in FY20, we budgeted for 40,000 and ended up spending 47,000 plus.
I don't, David, I don't disagree with any decisions that has been made in terms of operations and spending what we need to have a functioning wastewater plant. The point I'm trying to make is that it's one of the budgets in the town of Camden that has the biggest deltas between the budget and the actuals. And I think it's a reasonable question from water users to understand why there is such a delta and what we're going to do with the reserves. I'm more talking from a communications perspective, if you will, than really questioning how you're using the budget to keep the wastewater plant functioning. I just wanted to be clear. I'm not attacking you whatsoever. I'm just trying to understand.
No, it is a good point, because what I think Sophie's noticing is the money that, not the money that we budgeted to go into the reserve accounts, but what ends up in going into the wastewater treatment plant's unassigned fund balance. And I think that, once we've got this big project behind us and we know that we've got all of these collection system improvements to make ahead of us, we can sort of look at what our unassigned fund balance is, and then we can feel more comfortable about, reinvesting that money in some of these projects that we're going to need to do to improve the collection system. So that's kind of where I'm hoping to go with it. And the message that, like you said, Sophie, we need to get out to ratepayers is that that's going to be the plan. It's just, there's a lot of uncertainty around a $15.1 million project. So we've been very, very conservative in terms of budgeting and expenses. And I think once we have this behind us and we feel comfortable that, what we have in that unassigned fund balance isn't going to be needed for anything else, that's when we can start looking at, some of this other work that we know that we have ahead of us. So.
And I'm also going to assume that a brand spank new wastewater plant treatment is going to function more according to specs and standards and expectations than having poor Dave having to look on eBay for replacement parts. So maybe also the way we're going to start budgeting once we're up and running could change and take that into account. And we have a brand new car and not a.
Well, to your point about which I agree with, the communications thing, I think you hear this theme on the select board and other operations. Our ability to communicate these things is frustrating at times, because we've been talking about, for example, this tactic for the last 3 years, I believe, to increase this reserve so that there's not a big bang by the debt service, but I can guarantee you very few people even know that.
Yep.
It goes right over their heads. And also how serious the I&I problem continues to be. It just goes over people's heads. We did do, Dave, 1,800 homes that we did investigate, found some chunk that have some limited work that needs to be done to correct situations, but because of the 45,000, we don't believe we found it. There's just too many events going on. So again, with that, Allison.
Thank you.
When is the Cobb Hill culvert replacement
Which one?
going to happen? The Cobb Hill, I'm wondering do we need to do anything with carrying forward, or where do we stand on projects that were budgeted for but not completed?
Okay.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
we know when that's gonna happen?
Cobb Hill is scheduled for, to start July 19th.
2 weeks.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Who's gonna do that?
Good question, Allison.
It's Farley, but was a low bid.
Right, okay.
Cool.
And they're gonna be careful about erosion control and all that stuff?
Yes, yeah, that's all been engineered.
Oh, good. So am I correct in looking at this? Have you actually, for the revenues, have you calculated what the rate will be based on this budget? Is that what that 756 is?
Well, it'd be $8.23 per 100 cubic feet. You look at the FY 22 recommendation.
Yep.
Okay, I'm looking in the wrong spot. Where is that?
I saw it and I can't find it now.
It's on page 190 in your packet.
190.
Yeah,
I'm seeing,
it's on the very last page where our signatures are, Allison. The very last page that requires the commissioner's signatures. And there's a wastewater usage rate, which says current $7.56 per, that's 100 cubic feet. Right, Dave? And $8, and then recommended would be $8.23 recommended for FY 22.
where are you seeing the 8?
On the last page.
Last page, page 190.
I know I'm looking at page 190, but I'm sorry, I just don't see
The very
that.
top of the page under wastewater user rate.
It's right before the revenue page.
Yeah, it's before the revenue page, Allison. At page 7.
Oh, page one. I was on page 191. Okay.
Okay, that's where it is, Allison, $8.23.
Okay, so there was a very simple answer to my question from the beginning.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, sorry about that. Sometimes you don't get simple, especially at 9:30 at night when you get done. Anyway, I get a motion to accept, reject, or change this budget. Mark,
I'll make a motion that we accept the wastewater budget for 2021, 2022.
Second, thank you. Just further discussion? Roll call vote, Matt?
Aye.
Sophie?
Aye.
Elton?
Aye.
Mr. Ratner?
Aye.
Bob, I also 4, 5, 0. I can't count very well. But anyhow, motion passes. With that, thank you, Dave. Sorry you had to wait so late. We'll try to get you up front next time. With that, we have to go through, we're going to adjourn as wastewater commissioners and enter into executive session.
Do you need a motion for that?
I believe so.
I'll make a motion. We adjourn as wastewater commissioners. We have to reconvene as select board.
Yeah, we should.
And reconvene as select board, and then we will move into executive session.
Hold on, is the executive session as wastewater commissioners or as select board?
Select board, Alice, and that's why he made us go back to the select board to go to executive session. It's a little complicated, but that's why he made the motion that way.
Sorry, that's not clear from the agenda.
Yeah, it should be as wastewater commissioners.
Right, that's what I was.
Is it? I'm sorry, Alice. You were right and I was wrong again.
Oh.
So Mark, rephrase.
I make a motion, we move into executive session as wastewater commission.
Second.
Motion made the second. Roll call. Sophie.
Yes.
Matt.
Should we say, should we do the,
You're right. With even with one arm. Yes, one arm.
should we do the pursuant to, I mean, this is to discuss, I always get so frustrated when I'm watching other board meetings and they just go into executive session and they don't say why.
The motion should be to leave adjourn the leave the wastewater commissioners meeting and move into executive session under MRSA 405E legal rights and duties. That's
so
we don't need to adjourn it. We just need to go into executive session, but
You're correct. You're correct.
yes,
So with
I'm
that-
in favor.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote, Matt,
Aye.
Sophie,
Hi.
and Mark.
Aye.
Nelson.
Hi.
And Bob, aye. 5-0. Okay, if we could,
Yep, hold on. Let me-
thank you. Take your time, Allison, because I can take a nap.
Yeah, okay, so couple